everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. We got a special live episode today. We've got kind of a big trade that happened in the wee hours of the morning around the NBA. We'll talk about the LaMelo Ball deal that went down. We'll also get into the Isaiah Stewart trade that happened. We'll be breaking down the NBA draft. Oh, yeah, and Kobe White got a new contract as well. Then we're going to get into a little bit of NBA draft recap. Happy to have you all here. I'm Trevor Lane. He's Keith Smith and Bryce Simon joining us. You guys know him from the Game Theory podcast, as well as covering the Pistons over at Motor City Hoops. Bryce, thanks for jumping on and joining us today.
I'm a little disappointed. I thought I was going to get a live version of the front office, and I don't want to steal Keith's line. And
no, it's not Friday.
You make some exceptions every once in a while, and then it's this edition or that edition. No, I understand. I have a feeling it's going to be a lot of the NBA draft here as we go throughout and recap all 30 teams as well. But I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for an offseason that apparently has already fully started for the NBA.
Yeah, no doubt. So just so everybody knows, Trevor kind of laid it out. We're going to talk about the trades, the Hornets stuff that's going on. We're going to talk about the Isaiah Stewart trade. And then Trevor's going to drop out because he has to record a video about the Lakers' new big addition, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Robbie Avila. So they'll be fired up for that. And then Bryce and I we're going to do, if you guys have been longtime listeners, we've done, I think this will be our 4th or 5th year doing a full recap. We're going to go through all 30 teams, all 60 picks, probably mention a handful of two-way guys that got picked up after as well. So if you really want to know a lot about these guys who get drafted over the last couple of days, we're going to spend a lot of time. So it's probably going to be a pretty long run for us, but we're going to have a lot of fun doing that, and we'll have a good time. So let's get into it though, Trevor. Let's start with the big one.
All right, the Wolves trade for LaMelo Ball. It was the shocking trade. We started to hear a little bit of buzz about this last night. Gets done this morning. The Hornets trade LaMelo Ball and Josh Green to the Wolves for Naz Reid, a 2033 unprotected first-round pick. 3 first-round pick swaps. Are pick swaps going up in value? I think so. And 3 second-round picks, according to Shams Charania. Bryce, let's start with you. What was your initial reaction to this trade? To Minnesota going all in to go get LaMelo Ball?
So I fell asleep with the report or whatever that LaMelo Ball could potentially be on the trade block, right? So like that was kind of the last thing I remember from Wednesday night. I was not anticipating to then wake up, or I may have already been awake. I don't remember what time it all happened, to him actually being traded. So I was a little bit surprised by this. I had operated under the impression Charlotte would let this thing continue to play forward with LaMelo Ball and Con Knipple and Brandon Miller. And, they drafted Hans Steinbach, which we'll talk more about later. My just gut reaction, Keith, Trevor, is this is a big swing on both sides. I think this is a big swing for Minnesota Timberwolves, kind of going in with the LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, Ayo Dosunmu, McDaniels, Rudy Gobert. And for Charlotte, it's like, hey, we don't think this is going to go well. Those swaps, that pick, a few years out from now is really going to come back to us in a really good place. So, and then my other thought is just like, what does Charlotte do here moving forward? Do they try to replace this with a different archetype of guard? Is it just Kobe White, or, what are their plans now moving forward?
Yeah, I want to a couple things just mechanics wise with this trade. This trade is being rolled into that 3-team trade with the Wolves were already making with the Nets and the Bulls. And the reasons for that are because now Minnesota can aggregate the salaries going out for Julius Randle and Naz Reid. It was going to be really tough for them to kind of get to the salary matching for LaMelo Ball and Josh Green coming in. So that's how that's going to work. I had speculated when this news broke, and I was like 1:30 in the morning or so, or whatever time it was last night, that I had said like, yeah, don't be surprised if this ends up getting rolled into a, multiple team, into that other multi-team trade. The other thing was, can we stop with the wee hours of the morning? It was 9:30 on the East Coast. Knock it off.
6:30. We go.
That's not wee hours of the morning. That's when
that is wee hours of the morning. You gotta be humans. We have to be civilized here. Are you kidding me? 6:30 a.m., Keith. 6:30 a.m.
By 6:30 a.m., Bryce has already put in a full day of work on the farm and makes us two look lazy.
Okay, so I will flex. I was awake. I wake up at 5 o'clock, but it's not to work on the farm. It's because we have summer weights here, and so I have to get up at 5 so I can get my workout in and then be there on time and all of that. But I was awake at 5 o'clock.
Trevor was wrapped in his blanket, snoozing away because it's so early.
Dude, I went to okay, so 6:30 a.m. I went to bed at about 2 a.m. That's not cool, man. That's why we need an armistice. We need some hours where stuff doesn't get we go radio silent, and that way we know it's okay.
What time would be okay in your opinion?
Midnight Pacific to 8 a.m. Pacific.
That's 11 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast. Like,
so what?
It doesn't
matter. We run off Pacific time. Come on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, the country runs off East Coast time, my friend. That's why
this is classic Keith Smith East Coast bias coming in right here.
Let's go. Meanwhile, Bryce is like in the middle of the country. We just do our thing.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie. When I was on Mountain Time, it really played into my hands because my parents were very strict about bedtime or whatever. And I realized as I got older, like I would not have got as much Monday Night Football and all of that. If I would have grown up on the East Coast, I may not have been a sports fan. I wouldn't have got to watch anything. So.
All right, before everybody bows out and is like, are these guys just gonna argue about time zones for the rest of the day? Why don't we pull Arizona in and talk about they only change times?
Hey, that is phenomenal. I gotta say, I've lived that life. It is a nice life to be living when you don't have to deal with what time it is. Stuff.
Right? Like everybody else.
That's
like,
true.
What time is it there? Like I have no clue. All right. Anyway, so this trade. Here's my thoughts on this. This is a huge swing for both sides, as Bryce said. I think for the Hornets, you had a good thing going. They had an awesome offense. And for all the things we can say about LaMelo Ball, sometimes can be a little bit of a carnival act and doesn't offer a lot defensively. He had that offense humming. I love Kobe White. We're going to talk about, let's just roll it in now. Kobe White is going to do a 3-year, $74 million deal to re-sign with the Hornets. Well, they need him, one, right? Because their only other real on-ball guy in the backcourt going into this is Christian Anderson, who they drafted a couple nights ago. And clearly, if you want to be where you want to be, probably not handing the reins over to a, Bryce, tell me if I'm wrong, score-first rookie point guard. Not really.
I would agree.
So, and we'll talk a lot more about Christian Anderson in a little while. So, with this, it is – they still need work to do in the backcourt, but here's a good thing for the Hornets. They've now a $40.7 million trade exception from this trade for LaMelo Ball. They could choose to go under the cap and create like $43 million in cap space, but immediately they'd vaporize around like $22 million of that to re-sign Kobe White. So it's probably not going to be the direction they go. They'll probably stay over the cap. That trade exception could do like anything, right? That's big enough to bring in any number of players. A lot of people immediately went to John Morant's contract fits perfectly in that. Like, and maybe, who knows, right? We'll see where that all works out. But they have all kinds of flexibility now, which I think is amazing for them. Then I think for the Hornets, you're very clear now. This is Brandon Miller and Con Knippel's team, right? Like those are the guys for us. Naz Reid is going to really help them. I'm going to pause here to say everybody who started like they should trade for this big and this big and this big. Don't need any more bigs. They're happy now. They got Moussa Diabate and Ryan Kalkbrenner from last year. You now added Hannes Steinbach in the draft, and now you're getting Naz Reid. Like, you're good. And you still have like Grant Williams, a couple other guys. On the Wolves side, they probably should have taken Grant Williams instead of Josh Green because they have no size now, which is crazy for a team that was one of the biggest teams the last few years with Gobert and McDaniels and Randall. Now no Randall is out, no Naz Reid. Like they're just smaller. So we'll see ultimately how that goes. And the last thing I'll say before I turn it over to you guys, we'll see how this goes, right? It could be awesome. Maybe they turn into an even better version of what the Hornets were. That would be something else with this because Ant is obviously incredible. And then we'll see what they do to fill out the roster, because they've got about 16 million under their second apron hard cap. They're all in to be a tax team again. No issues there. So let's see what more work they have to do. And they still get Dante DiVincenzo in his expiring contract. And it's a cruel world. He's hurt. He's out for the season, but it is what it is at some point while you're trying to build out your roster.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they can. Well, they should be able to use at least the taxpayer MLE, but the non-tax, I don't know they can get to that. That's going to be real challenging
Be
for
almost
Minnesota.
Impossible.
Yeah. So I guess starting with the Minnesota side, look, we started hearing rumors just a few days ago. I think it was Hoop Collective mentioned that like the vultures are circling around Anthony Edwards, that he's got 3 years in a contract, but still, this is a guy who teams are already kind of keeping an eye on, like, hey, this could be the next star to ask out. And Minnesota doesn't want to go down that path. Tim Connelly already made it clear, hey, if we make a mistake here, it's going to be a loud mistake, because we are not holding back. We're going to be bold in this. And this is certainly bold. Now you've got a backcourt mate for Anthony Edwards. I am curious to see, do they wind up starting Jaden McDaniels at the 4 and play a little bit smaller? We all are seeing more teams start to run 3 guards when one nominally gets called the 3, and I guess Ant in this scenario would be called the 3, and then you can try to maximize your dribble, pass, shoot skill sets out there on the floor, with Ayo Dosunmu also starting in that group. Or is there somebody else that they're going to go grab and add in to be a starting power forward? Because you're right, this Wolves side does go from being very big to suddenly being a much smaller team with Rudy Gobert manning the middle, and not that Julius Randle or Naz Reid next to him, be a smaller player like a Jaden McDaniels or someone like that, unless they can go add something out there on the market. I get the gamble for the Minnesota side. They felt like they had gone as far as they could go. They're great if they're going to play against the Denver Nuggets, but when it comes to beating some of the other teams in the NBA, they thought they needed to make changes. And so you give them credit for going for it and give them what it takes to make those moves. That said, I love this deal for the Hornets. And here's why I love this so much for the Hornets. It was a year ago when we were talking about the 3 guards that were going to be on the move, or at least attempt to be on the move, was Ja Morant, Trae Young, and LaMelo Ball. Those were the 3. And guess what? The market went, meh, not that excited, right? Ja is still stuck in Memphis right now. They're going to try to move him. Trae Young eventually moved and basically got salary dumped. The Hornets, if they decided a year ago that LaMelo Ball is not the guy we want to be tied to long-term, you think about what they just did. They got first-round pick, a bunch of swaps, a bunch of second-round picks, a big trade exception, and you took a guy that over the last 4 years, 3 of those years, he has been incredibly injured. He's played in 36 games, 22 games, 47 games, and then this past season, 72 games. The Hornets went, okay, he had a healthy season. This is our chance. If he goes and gets hurt next year and does the same thing, plays 20 games, hopefully it does. I don't want to see guys get hurt. But the Hornets said, this is our opportunity to get off of the merry-go-round here with LaMelo Ball. If they decided this is not as good as things were, if they decided we don't want to be tethered to LaMelo Ball moving forward into the future, I think they timed this very, very well. Now, again, maybe it comes back to haunt them. Maybe their offense doesn't hit the same levels this next season, but they seized the opportunity. They got good value. They got value that they weren't going to get a year ago. And maybe this was the perfect sell high moment with LaMelo Ball. Very talented player, but a long history of injuries. They waited. They got to the point where he had a relatively healthy season, and they got out of the LaMelo Ball business. And now they have a ton of flexibility here moving forward. And I'm really interested to see what they do with that big trade exception. So assuming that was the decision the Hornets made, is it a risk? Yes, it is. But there was a very real possibility that a year or two from now, we're talking about how could the Hornets move on from LaMelo Ball, and they're kind of stuck and there's not that many suitors. That could have been the situation they were in. They said, nope, we see what's coming. Let's get out now. And so I give them credit for doing that.
Yeah, and now 12 first-round picks in the next 7 years. 8 of those are tradable. Pretty good place to be in. We'll see how lottery reform impacts having multiple years in a row of a team swaps. But the good news is for the Hornets, swaps are super valuable now, because those you can decide on if you want to use it after the lottery, right? You could be like, yeah, that's great. They landed a good pick. Let's go take it away. And a couple people asked on social media, why was it only one first round pick and all these swaps? That's all Minnesota had because they're leveraged with all their other first round picks from the Gobert trade and other trades. So they're in a spot where it is, all right, we kind of had to do this there. So huge gamble. Here's the big thing ultimately with all of this. If Anthony Edwards is really wanted to stay in Minnesota, if they got the right guys around him, then this is probably worth it. Right in the end, is go get him somebody he wants to play with, and off they go. So I think this is a pretty interesting move. We'll see. I think there's a chance this turns into a real circus, sideshow act of just running around doing crazy stuff between the two of them. But they said LaMelo. What was one of the reports was LaMelo Ball's ready to be more serious and play. So let's see where it goes.
I think one of my biggest things, guys, real quick, is this is the last move for this iteration of the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? Are they? I feel like they're capped out in terms of, pun intended, I guess, but cap space wise, second rating wise, draft pick wise, they've, to your point, I like the starting lineup, but what is the depth? Jan Berenger, I think, is going to be fine at center. Anyway, I just feel like this is the last thing. There's no other pivot if this doesn't work. Am I missing something, I guess, is my question, Keith, because that's where I am at.
Rudy Gobert still has value. True. I know he's not everybody's favorite player in the world, but if they wanted to pivot there, that could be a thing. So we'll see, if that's a way they wanted to go. But yeah, I think you're right in general. You've kind of gone all in now, especially in terms of assets. Now, a year from now, they'll gain another one when it turns into the 2034 pick. But yeah, we're still in a place where this is a spot for sure for the Timberwolves where you're pretty leveraged with this. And all right, if you're running out a closing lineup of Gobert, McDaniels, and Ayo Dosunmu and LaMelo Ball, not bad. Problem is you got to get through 82 games. You need 100 games of depth if you really want to be a contender. And you mentioned Berenger. They'll have Terrence Shannon Jr., who they're really high on. Imagine they'll probably bring back Jalen Clark. They might have even Mike Conley come back on a minimum. It'll be an attractive place for guys who are looking for a path to playing time, especially if you're a front court player. So they're going to fill out fairly well with that. But yeah, it'll be interesting. All right, let's go now to Bryce. We're going to bring you in here on this one for sure, because this is right in your neck of the woods. For those of you guys who don't know, Bryce is not only a draft guy, but he covers the Pistons, Motor City Hoops, as well as what is it? Pistons Pulse.
Pistons Pulse. Yep.
I should know it by habit because my daughter wears the sweatshirt that you guys sent me, and she immediately swiped almost every day, around the house. Kids in Florida wearing sweatshirts are just maniacs. I don't understand it, but that's what they do. But anyway, Isaiah Stewart to the mess this all up, to the Memphis Grizzlies, 3 second-round picks. We still don't really know what 3 second-round picks, because they were the 3 mystery second-round picks the Pistons acquired earlier in the first round of the draft, and it sounds like it's those same 3 are going out. So let's start with the Grizzlies side. I just think it's a little easier there because they got the player. They get somebody who fits perfectly what they want to be, right? Grit and grind, beat people up, do all this stuff. I think now they have a really nice. What's that?
Literally?
Yeah, exactly.
Ask LeBron.
That's why I said it. I wasn't being hyperbole there. They are in a spot now where it is pretty good 3 big rotation with Zach Edey, Isaiah Stewart, and Cam Boozer. Play any 2 of those guys together, and I think you're probably fine on both ends of the floor. It's this is almost kind of like a no cost pickup for them because they are miles away from the luxury tax. They will very likely use the non-taxpayer mid-level to bring Stewart in because that's going to allow them then to keep their $28 million trade exception for Jaren Jackson Jr. that they had. So that'll be interesting to kind of keep an eye on that. But I like this pickup for Memphis.
I like it for Memphis as well. Essentially, they moved back from 17 to 21 or 16. I think originally 16 to 21 to acquire Stewart. I think Isaiah Stewart is a very good backup big in this league. I think at one point in the regular season last year, Isaiah Stewart probably was in all defense conversation if he would have played enough minutes. And then obviously he didn't qualify with the games played, 20 minutes per game, all of that, or games of 20 minutes. I think just looking at the Grizzlies roster, it's very interesting, Keith, because they're almost in the Oklahoma City. We all talk about Oklahoma City having to move a player. Memphis is now in that, and I like Memphis's draft. We'll talk about Cam Boozer later, Karim Lopez. We'll talk about that later. And then they got Richie Saunders, who I think is an awesome pickup for them. But I didn't realize that Memphis was in a situation where, hey, somebody's going to have to move here, guys, to bring in Isaiah Stewart and Cam Boozer. And then if they're going to roster, Karim Lopez, I guess Richie Saunders, they could put on a two-way, but it's
Trevor's still scrolling.
I'm still going.
Keep going, Trevor.
Yeah.
And two of those two ways already. I'm interested to see if I'm a team. I'm calling about Gigi Jackson. I'm calling about Cam Spencer. I'm calling about Scottie Pippen Jr. and just seeing what Memphis's plans are for, maybe Taylor Hendricks. I'm calling about those guys and seeing what the plans are.
Yeah, let's pause here. Let's be very respectful.
Yes.
Brandon Clark is still there. That will come off.
Yeah.
Obviously, he will not stay on the books. Just absolutely horrendous situation there. Taj Gibson, I imagine, will also be waived. He will come off the books. And then there's a lot of speculation around KCP. Does he do a buyout? Maybe. But here's the thing. $21.6 million is a nice chunk of salary to put up in a trade. And if I'm Memphis, I am under no rush to buy him out. That could even be one where because it's fully guaranteed, so you don't need to do it anytime soon. That could be one that even happens late in the summer, maybe even in training camp. They may hang on to him into the season just to have that as a chunk of tradable salary. But he's not going to play for this team. He wasn't playing at the end of the year. And maybe there's always the chance he goes to them and says, hey, if I'm not going to play for you, I think I can still offer something to a team. Will you let me go? And then any of these teams that are looking for a veteran wing, maybe all over, let's bring in KCP and see if we can kind of recapture for a season what he was. Probably will be on a minimum contract after this one. So, it's not going to be asked to give up too much. Because again, Grizzlies are, even after all this, they're still like miles from the luxury tax.
Yeah, I love the move getting Isaiah Stewart. I don't know exactly how they do open up that roster space. A lot of people say, well, they're just going to move John Morant. They're trying. I mean, they've been trying to move John Morant. That has not proven to be an easy task. We'll see ultimately what happens.
We're like 6 months into them trying to move John
Morant. It feels like every day all we hear is another team gets added to the list of teams that are out on John Morant, right? I mean, that's what we're hearing right now. So I don't know exactly what they do with Ja. Eventually, every contract that we look at and say that's not tradable, eventually it gets traded. It will happen. I just don't know exactly where. And I can't say for sure that they're going to be able to just trade him and not take back anybody. So when we're talking about clearing a roster spot, people in the chat saying, well, they're going to get rid of John Morant. They may have to take back players to do that. So they're in a bit of a crunch there. But overall, I love, you guys are going to get into it, but I love what the Grizzlies did in the draft. I mean, come on. You moved back 5 spots, still got your guy for cheaper, and you got 5 second-round picks for it? That's phenomenal.
It was draft day in real life.
It was real-life draft day. Exactly. That would solve our salary cap problem, right? Oh, my God. I mean, what a freaking night for the Memphis Grizzlies.
What does the owner say at the end? We had a great
day.
I imagine that's how Memphis was parading around last night.
I will also quickly on Stewart, the club option next year, I think is also important to bring up for Memphis. I think he's on a reasonable number as it is, but on top of that $15 million, it was a flat salary whenever he signed that contract. I assume it was 4 for $60, if I remember right. But that club option there next season. So if things don't go well in Memphis, if Zach Edey just comes back and is awesome, and whatever I think he's going to be awesome, but I mean, like, stays healthy and all of that, or whatever, you could get off of that money as well if they needed to. But I think he'll play a really nice role for them this season.
I do as well. Now, on the Pistons side of this trade, because instantly, right, you the Windhorse fingers. Like, why did they do this? Well, they're clearing flexibility and probably cap space to make a run at. We're hearing all kinds of big names linked to the Pistons, and then some guys who are very good players, just not quite as big names, right? We've heard Tyler Hero since the Giannis trade went down. We've heard Norman Powell could be a target. But now we're hearing maybe they get involved in trading for Jaylen Brown. Maybe they look at getting Kawhi Leonard. Maybe they are interested in any number of other good players that could come up. Clearly, Detroit is. I think they're going to be extremely aggressive this summer about trying to retool around Cade Cunningham as best they can. They made an aggressive trade in the draft to go up and get Ibuka Okoro. We'll talk a lot more about that when we get into the draft recap. But it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. But they're clearly gearing up to be in a position to, if player X with a $40+ million salary is available, by trading Stewart, what you've done is you've put yourself in the room to have the conversation. You're not having to say, well, we can go get that player, but give us a couple days to figure out the 7 other moves we got to do. Now it's we got maybe 1 or 2 other things, and off we go.
I was surprised by this, to be honest with you. I shouldn't say that. I guess we had been hearing about this a little bit, but I thought the Isaiah Stewart would probably get traded in the bigger move. Maybe it still ends up, like, I'm trying to hold off to see just like the overall offseason plan from Trajan Langdon, right? And I'll give my thoughts on the Ibuka Okoro pick later. But I just want to see where this goes. And the thing that's tough is they still have so much optionality. They could go under the cap now. They could go over the cap still, and that could potentially make sense. Like you just don't know. And so I'm interested to see. Here's what's crazy to me. I've been doing this for 6 years now. I started in December of 2020 with Motor City Hoops when we wouldn't even get 100 viewers for a podcast. I just looked, we have 2,000 live right now, which is just crazy to think of. I know this is your guys' podcast.
But you also hit the like button, please,
yes,
if you're watching right now. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet as well.
Yes, you guys absolutely should be. This is the as good as it gets out there, the front office show, and Trevor and Keith, nobody better in terms of just being great people as well. But my point is, Isaiah Stewart was drafted that year. He was the last member of the team that I originally, quote unquote, covered for the Pistons. Cade Cunningham is now the longest tenured Detroit Piston on the roster. And so it's just crazy how fast these things can happen in the NBA, how fast the roster turnover can happen. And I think what is interesting is, the whole toughness, the defense, all of that. Stewart kind of embodied all of those things, and now he's gone. And so you kind of just wonder, I don't want to say this is just going to be a complete culture shift or whatever, but, is Detroit going to go a little bit more offense, or did they feel like somebody else can fill, that role? What does it mean for Paul Reed and Tolu Smith and some of those guys as well? Here's my biggest takeaway is, I don't know what the Jalen Duren number is going to be, but I do kind of wonder if Trajan Langdon just simply said, if we're going to pay Jalen Duren $35 million, whatever, then we have to win on the margins behind him. We can't have one of the highest paid backup bigs, which I think Stewart would be, on the roster. We have to do it with $5 million to Paul Reed, a couple $1 million to Tolu Smith. They traded up into the second round to draft a Yinso. I did a breakdown over on the Substack for that today. Came away kind of interested for like a 2-way potential development big. I just wonder if that's what Trajan's saying is we can't have all of these investments. We can't have 50, 55, $60 million tied up into the full center rotation.
Well, let's not forget, by the end of the playoffs, Paul Reed was playing over Isaiah Stewart.
He absolutely was. It's a great point.
Now, Stewart was banged up, to be fair, but they'd gone to Paul Reed because Stewart was ineffective. So they're obviously very comfortable with Paul Reed being their primary backup big man. I've not historically been the biggest Paul Reed fan, but as a backup center, fine. Like, no issues at all. Like, I think he does a really good job with that. So, all right, Trev, we got anything else we got to get into before we let you go to do your thing?
Well, I'll roll our one ad read here. Give a shout out to our sponsor, and then I'll jump out here. So real quick, guys, we'll be right back in 1 minute. Going to pause for a moment to give a shout out to our sponsor, that is Prize Picks. Got a great deal right now. Play $5, get $50 instantly when you use the code HMA. The link is in the description down below. Super easy to play Prize Picks. All you got to do is pick more or less on some of your favorite players. And they've got all kinds of sports on there, not just basketball. You also have the NFL, MLB, NHL, and so on. Let's take a look at the NFL, the upcoming season here. I'm going to roll with Puka Nacua. I'm going to say more than 1,249.5 receiving yards. He had over 1,700 last season, so I feel pretty good about that one. And then Ashton Genty, he had 975 rushing yards as a rookie last year. Right now coming in at 974.5 rushing yards. I think he is going to get more than that and improve upon his rookie year numbers. If you guys want to get in on it, again, that code is HMA. The link is in the description down below. Play $5, get $50 instantly. And if you're going to play, please do so responsibly. All right, and again, a big shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring the show. Keith, you'll have to handle the screen share from here. I am going to go and butcher A.K. Okerake's name as often as I close. I'm just gonna call him AK because otherwise
I'm gonna give you a present before you go.
What's that?
I got the pronunciation guide up just in case I need to get into these. Then
you sent that to me. I've got it.
Yeah, A-K-O-K Ray K.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah.
Okay, Rick. He's
just
AK.
call him not Kirilenko.
Not Kirilenko.
Yeah, he's AK, but not Kirilenko.
I'm gonna go butcher his name as much as I possibly can and put together a little report here for Lakers Nation on the undrafted free agents that they just picked up. So I'm gonna
go take a
work
nap
on that.
This poor NBA league got you up so early.
No, man, I'm gonna sleep mid-July. That's when I'm targeting to sleep. Like after Vegas, after Summer League. That's when I'll catch up on some sleep at that point.
Thanks, brother. We appreciate you.
All right, guys. We'll see you.
All right, guys. So Bryce and I now, Trevor's gone. We are going to dive deep into NBA draft recap stuff. If you guys have listened over the last couple years when we've done this, we usually record this. We're just doing it live today because just the way everything played out, just easier to do it live and quite honestly peek behind the curtain. When you do the show live, there's a lot less work on the back end to get it to post and do all the things you need to do. Every year when we do this, we start with the Atlanta Hawks at the top of the alphabet and we go alphabetical by city. But this year we're going to do it reverse order because the Wizards and Jazz had the top two picks in the draft. So that means Toronto will be third up. Their draft was interesting. I don't want to downplay it. So we'll get into that. But what we're going to do is we're going to get into this will probably be a little bit different. We probably like AJ DeBonta. We're not going to spend 15 minutes on because everybody's kind of knows him. That's already been done. We will spend more time on some of the second round guys, later first round guys. And then if there were like kind of priority two-way guys they picked up and things like that, we might throw some of those in there as well. So we're going to get started with that. With the Washington Wizards drafted. And when I say drafted, just guys, it's whoever they finished the draft with or projected to finish the draft with because some trades are not official. So they might have drafted other guys and traded them. But that's just so we are all on the same page. They finished with AJ DeBonta and Felix Okpara, who they acquired in a trade. Bryce we'll start with DeBonta, obviously. Was that the right pick at number one?
So real quick, I did talk to some people today who are very frustrated by the whole NBA team hat stuff. And so I've had to consistently explain why the NBA is different than the NFL draft and all of that. So NBA, another year of please just figuring out a way to not make that such a thing.
It has gotten better, thankfully, where now they will at least like acknowledge that there's a proposed trade where before it used to be like, hey, how are you going to like going to play with LeBron? And it's like, kids like, didn't I just see on Twitter that I'm being traded somewhere else? And it's like these 19 and 20-year-old kids are like, I don't know how to lie through answering this question.
Correct. Everybody just kind of acknowledges it now, which does make it a little bit easier. I've had AJ DeBonta number one from the start of the cycle throughout the entire cycle. There were times where it's like, okay, do I like have all three of these guys like truly like it's solely based on fit, or do I have DeBonta a little bit ahead? I say what I have said is that I would have AJ Debonsa number one for all 30 teams. I would not have cared which NBA team got the number one pick. If you threw all 30 names in a hat, whichever one you pulled out, I would take AJ Debonsa number one, just slightly above Darren Peterson and Cam Boozer. So for me, I think even if it did matter in this scenario, I think he would fit nicely with this Washington Wizards roster, and he absolutely was the correct pick in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add to that because I'm in the same boat. I've had this guy number one in the entire process as well on my personal board. The big thing with AJ Debonsa for me was because he grew up only 2 towns over from me. I started having people tell me when he was like 8, 9, 10 years old, like this kid's gonna play in the NBA. And normally it's like, okay, like yeah, okay. He just happens to be super tall and the other kids aren't, and he's faster than the other kids. And then the first time it was actually a friend of mine at an AAU tournament where Debonsa was destroying his son's team. He was like, you got to check this kid out. And I was like, oh, he doesn't move like a normal. He was like 13, 14 years old at that time. And I was like, all right, there's something here. So it's going to be, I think he's going to get a chance to be a really special player. His big thing is going to be defense. He owned it. He has all the tools defensively. It's just going to be, is he going to commit, right? Yep. Like there's no reason he can't be a better defender. I think that's actually where playing on a team out of the gate with Trae Young, with Anthony Davis is going to help him because he's not going to have to be Cooper Flagg last year where it's like, hey, you need to do everything and play a ton of defense. I think he will be a spot there where, he'll just go with that. So I think this was the right pick. I think the fit is good in Washington. I'm super excited to see how all that young players come together, how that all meshes, because they've got a lot of guys now. We already talked a lot about re-signing Trae Young. So that's obviously the thing for them. But I think this Wizards team is fun. What are your thoughts on Felix Okpara in the second round?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was kind of the range for me. I had him as a top 60 prospect. And like, just to be clear, as we go throughout this, whenever we get into the late first and into the second round, you'll hear me just reference, I had him as a top 60 guy. I didn't have him as a top 60 guy. Whenever we talk about some of maybe these undrafted free agents or whatever, like I'll be completely transparent. There's going to be a couple that I think there was a couple second rounders I don't have a whole lot of scout on as well. Whenever it's the first round, my tiers are a little bit tighter.
You say when we get to what is it? Narcisse Ngoy, you're not going to have 15 minutes of thoughts.
If you don't have anything, then we may have to move through that one rather quickly. Yeah. But, Okpara, 4-year guy in college, started out at Ohio State, then a couple years at Tennessee. One thing that I always like to point out with, him, and there's be other players as well, when you look at the raw box scores, just make sure you check the minutes. So, for example, in his rebounding, big-time offensive rebounder, and 2.5 offensive rebounds per game is really, really good, right? But it was in only 27 minutes per game as well. So just like, I think the idea here for the Wizards is you add a big, I don't know if it'll end up on a 2-way or what. I didn't put that in if that's already been reported or not. But
yeah, it hasn't been.
Okay. But you get a big here that can kind of fill that role, a rim finisher, a guy that can really rebound, protect the rim and defend, all of that. Like, this is the type of big that hopefully you can develop. I don't think he probably ends up being a starter for your team, but you get, really good value if he ends up being, heck, even the third big on your team at some point over the next 4 or 5 years, if he stays with your organization for that long.
Yeah, I just think good developmental big to put in your system. Yes, he's an older player. So is the entirety of the second round. Yeah, and that's just how it's going to be probably for a while with NIL and all the rules that are going on there. Couple exceptions to that, and we'll talk about them when we get to those players and those teams. That's more a couple of the international guys. But yeah, it's going to be, for the most part, these are going to be older players now. It's always been more the older guys go in the second round, but it is extremely that way this year. But I think he's a good developmental big. I'm going to pull a super chat, guys. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with the super chats, just so it'll kind of set the expectation. If they are draft related, I'll pull them as I see them and we'll answer them. Any of the other super chats, I'm going to save, and then we will come back to them on tomorrow's Front Office Friday show. They'll already be in the system and we'll be able to get into them then. So if it's a bunch of stuff, because otherwise Bryce and I will be here for till midnight trying to get through this. It's already going to be a long show. So we're going to try to be respectful of each other's times with all that. So just so everybody knows, that's going to be the plan for Super Chat. So we'll start with this one from Johnny Test. Says, since Fletcher Lawyer signed an Exhibit 10 contract, does he go to Summer League? Yeah, it's a big part of why these guys do Exhibit 10 contracts. So yes, he will absolutely be someone who will go to Summer League. I don't remember where he landed.
The Clippers, I believe,
Clippers,
if I'm not mistaken.
I think his dad works for the Clippers, if I remember correctly. So yeah, he'll be on the Clippers Summer League team. Exhibit 10 contract, because there was another question about what's the difference between that and a two-way. Exhibit 10 is a training camp deal, and we call it a training camp deal. They used to call it a summer contract. Same thing. It is basically covers from right at the start of Summer League all the way through into training camp. And then the idea with the vast majority of the Exhibit 10 players are they will get waived and then go to the G League team, and they'll be part of the team's G League program and go kind of forward from there. So that's where we're kind of going.
One thing real quick, just because Summer League got brought up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Keith, but one thing that always comes up with Summer League rosters, if your first round pick or second round pick or whatever was involved in a trade, those trades have to officially go through, and most of the time they do. But just
that's
know
a good
those
thing about Summer League being a little later now.
Yes, those trades do have to officially go through. Most of them will. It won't be a big deal, whatever. But every once in a while, it's like, well, why isn't he doing this or that or whatever? Just understand that those things have to officially happen before. So,
yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. All right, so we're gonna move now to the Utah Jazz. Utah Jazz, they only came away with one player that they drafted, but pretty good one. If you only have one pick, you're pretty good to make the most of it. And they come away with Darren Peterson out of Kansas. Some controversy with Peterson throughout the course of the year with injuries, cramping, whatever story you want to believe, with that kind of pulling himself in and out of games, missing games. There was some stuff in the pre-draft process about I think maybe he's trying to engineer his way to Washington. Who knows with that. And then amongst draft analysts, there were still draft analysts. Then this is the difference between a big board and a mock draft, who are saying Darren Peterson is number one on their big board, but AJ DeBonsa was number one on their mock draft because they felt like that's how it would go down. But Peterson lands with Utah. I'll give quick thoughts on this one. I think with Darren Peterson this is a really great fit, because I think he and Keontae George are kind of what you want in a modern backcourt. Both guys can play on and off ball. They can play with each other. They've got shooting in other ways that I think will help both of those guys, because Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. can step out and shoot the three. We're going to assume a Walker Kessler will be back with the Jazz for now, because that's where signs are pointing. So that we'll see how that kind of plays out as well. With that. And then you've also got Ace Bailey in the mix. And it sounds like they're already saying Ace Bailey's going to be their sixth man, because they're intending to start Peterson. So I think there's just a lot of different ways this Jazz team can go. They've got a lot of optionality with their rosters, a lot of versatility in that group. And I think Peterson's a really good pickup. Plus, if things get sideways with Keontae George in an extension in the next contract, you're covered, because now you have your lead guard already in place.
I agree with all of that. And this is one of those cases where if I have players that I feel like are very much in the same tier, I'm comfortable talking about fit. I know this drives people crazy and they don't want to hear it. And if that's your process, that's your process. Like, I understand it. But I had Darren Peterson and Cam Boozer very much in the same tier. And for me, if I'm Utah, I think the fit of adding Darren Peterson is just a little bit easier, especially after trading for Jaren Jackson Jr. and me not thinking that Cam Boozer's a 5. We've seen the Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5 stuff. So where I felt very similar about Boozer and Darren Peterson, it just made a lot more sense for me for Darren Peterson to be the pick for the Jazz. I think he's going to be really good. Like, if you just watch the on-court stuff of Peterson, and I don't have intel, I don't have sources, I have no idea what the off-the-court stuff, if there's even any concerns with the injuries, creatine, whatever. But man, when he was healthy and he was playing, that jumper is so smooth. He can get it off very quick. My comp for him, and I want to be very careful, I'm not saying this is who he's going to be, but like the way he just kind of plays and goes about is Devin Booker. Like that's kind of like at one point people would bring up Anthony Edwards. I don't think he's that level of athlete. I think it's a little bit more Devin Booker, because with Booker, like he will play with the ball in his hands and he can do some creation, but he's not your primary, point guard creator, right? I think that that's what I see from Darren Peterson. And just real quickly, if you're someone that is worried about the passing and the creation, which I think is fair if you only watched him at Kansas, there are a lot of people that will tell you that was much, much better in high school. And I watched some of Peterson in high school, not a ton to speak like super confidently on that, but was much more of like a passer, a creator, a point guard in high school than what we saw this last year at KU.
Yeah, this year was, just to put it very simply, a mess for him. If you were only drafting off this year and just didn't know anything else about him, you'd probably be like, I don't like I still see it because there was enough there, but he'd probably be more in like the 5-6 range in this draft than number 2. But it's the overall body of work of seeing this kid for years. Plus, when he played, he was so good. And I love that Booker comp from you, because style of play wise, yeah, that feels right on. I think he's probably at similar ages. I'm not saying today, so nobody get all bent out of shape about this. He's probably actually better off the dribble than Devin Booker was, but Booker was a better shooter than Darren Peterson was. I don't know that Peterson ever gets to the Booker level shooter. I think if Booker was just, if he played like Klay Thompson and just flew around screens and took shots, we talk about Devin Booker's like, this guy's one of the best shooters we've ever seen in the game. It's because he has to do so many other things. That's probably a little bit different. But yeah, I think that comp is really good. Because yeah, Anthony Edwards Booker is just very smooth, where Edwards is very like, boom. Like there's just a lot of power in his game.
Yeah.
Not that he hasn't smoothed out, but like it's just so much power with that. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this pick for the Jazz and where they go with this. So, all right, now we're going to move, unless you got anything else on Jazz, any undrafted.
No, I mean, Jackson Kohler is an interesting name. I'm actually, so a great resource, I'm literally on the website right now, is the rookie scale. They have an undrafted free agent tracker over there for all of these different players. But Jackson Kohler is just like an interesting, like, I'll call him a big, kind of undersized, but skilled, shot 39% from 3 on 4 attempts, can rebound the ball, plays physical, from Michigan State. I think it's at least just worth, dropping that name here. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but Jackson Kohler was a name that was at least on my radar, going through this process. Is definitely an undrafted free agent, but somebody that, we'll see. Utah doesn't have a lot of like spots for a young player to, like they just have so many young players already that they're developing. But anyway.
Yeah, shout out to the rookie scale. John, I hope I'm saying this right. I think it's Chepkovich is how you say his last name. I don't know John other than we mutually follow each other on Twitter.
I think I do as well, yeah.
I know he does work with Draft Express, so that kind of tells me all I really need to know. If the Draft Express guys are trusting you to work with them, that's probably pretty good. But he does like really good work around the draft, and then great work on digging out some intel on some of these undrafted guys as well. So great resource. Again, that is if you just Google the rookie scale, it pops up, and one of the links right at the top is UDFA tracker. And it's actually conveniently, for what we're doing today, sorted in alphabetical order by
yes,
NBA.
It is.
So
yes,
that is that is extremely helpful, because I was like, oh wait, how am I going to have to order this? And thankfully,
you don't have to.
I don't have to. So
you do
all
not.
Right,
it's perfect.
We are now going to move to the Toronto Raptors. To recap, I think one of I can tell you in the second round for sure, the Raptors were the only second round pick at number 50 overall that did not get traded and change hands at some point in the life of that pick being a thing. That was the only one that started as a Raptors pick and lived as a Raptors pick all the way through, which is just bonkers. But in the first round at number 19, I believe it was, they went with Allen Graves. And then in the second round, Jaden Bradley. So Allen Graves is a kind of he's a bigger forward, not necessarily in height, but bulk wise, but he's kind of a do everything forward. I want to really get your thoughts on Allen Graves. And then Jaden Bradley is a bigger guard, but can do a lot of different things kind of with the ball in his hands. I think he kind of, well, I'll give my thoughts on him very quickly. He fits like a Raptors developmental profile really well. My guess is probably if he doesn't land on a two-way, we'll probably very likely spend a lot of time in the G League this upcoming season. Probably going to be on a two-way would be my guess.
So Allen Graves is one of the funnest players to discuss in this class because, I mean, there are people that thought he should have been a lottery pick. Listen, the whole analytics versus eye test thing, like this is where like Allen Graves really comes into play. And listen, I'm somebody that thinks both matter a lot. I don't think one or the other can do it by itself. I think you use both and you end up in a good spot. And so my thing with Graves is, like, I love the potential to really space the floor. I think he's going to have to speed up the mechanics on the shots. I love the defensive disruption. I love his rebounding and the way he values position and attacks the ball. Here are my questions, Keith. He played a lot of time at the 5 at Santa Clara in that conference off the bench. And so it's like, okay, well, we have all just kind of, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of what people do is just, oh, he's just going to play the 4 in the NBA. Okay, well, that's not easy to do, right? Like this is a very, athletic league, and is Graves going to be able to chase guys around the perimeter and do all of those things at the 4? I think where I land is I think Allen Graves is going to be able to play the 4 offensively. I have some more questions on whether he's going to be able to do it defensively. If I wanted to give you the Toronto idea, it's if they lose Sandro Mamukelishvili, they would foresee Allen Graves kind of filling into that kind of Mamukelishvili role, which makes sense. And to your point with Jaden Bradley, I think that Allen Graves is a guy that can be disruptive defensively, which is obviously something the Toronto Raptors value.
Yeah, so there's an archetype I like in college basketball, and it's guys who could do a lot of things. Like, I think it just shows if you could do a lot of things. A couple other things, guards who rebound are like my favorite thing in the world because I think it shows a whole level of toughness that is there, especially when small guards get in there. I like, this is going to come up a little later, I like audacious shot takers and makers. If they believe the confidence to shoot, I think that's a huge thing. Then I'm also a massive fan of like just super athletic bouncy bigs, and those, that's where I go wrong more than anything else because I get super bought in, and then half of them end up, that's all they ever are, is super athletic and bouncy and can't do anything else. But with Graves, he falls in that do everything category, like just does a lot of different stuff, and I am really excited to see what he becomes. I think Toronto probably has a similar draft ethos because look at Colin Murray Boyles is a similar big that was a kind of a do everything thing big. And I think that is really important as you kind of put that together with what Toronto wants to be, is that their guys can dribble, pass, and shoot on the offensive end. They can be versatile defensively. I'm with you. I don't know that he's going to be able to guard down. I think in the NBA, I think he's going to be a little too slow. He kind of reminds me of a little bit is Grant Williams. There's a little bit of Grant Williams in his game,
sure,
as far as can do some stuff. Williams might have been a better standstill shooter. Graves is better off the dribble. I think Graves is better at kind of just putting his head down and burrowing his way where he needs to go with that. But I think this was a pretty good pick for Toronto value-wise at number 19.
So I had Graves lower on my personal board, but this is one of those situations where he was in this tier of players. Like, this was his quote unquote range for me. And when you factor in how well I thought he fit with Toronto, I was I brought this up on Raptors Republic with 10 days ago, that I thought it would be personally reasonable for the Raptors to take Allen Graves.
Yeah. Overall, I think just good solid draft by Toronto, and this is kind of what they do. They just have good. They're rarely in place to pick the super high end guys. Like Scotty Barnes was different. His team wasn't good then. He obviously turned out, but they just tend to draft solid players who end up becoming solid contributors at the NBA level. Like I think about look at like Jamal Shed, second round pick, and like Jamal Shed is, for my money, I would be all over trying to acquire a guy like him down the line. All right, undrafted guys for the Raptors.
Nate Biddle, I think, deserves at least a comment here. Only like he took 300 threes in his college career at Oregon as a 7-footer. And so like, I think that's at least worth, and also had more than 60 assists the last couple years. We'll see how it turns out. Like my notes literally say like Quentin Post is the idea, but I think Quentin Post was better. And so like we'll see, but and then they had Namari Burnett as well. Both of these are exhibit 10s. Burnett, obviously, off the Michigan national championship team. We'll talk a lot about his teammates here as we go throughout the episode. But I thought Nate Biddle was at least worth a mention, just as a big that can potentially space the floor.
Yeah, I think there was some injury stuff with him that probably caused him to go undrafted. But yeah, if you're Toronto, you don't really have a stretch big like that on the roster because that's not obviously not what Jakob Poeltl is. You're maybe going to lose Mamu. We'll see. And then but worth definitely looking at. And again, another guy maybe eventually goes to a two-way. Maybe he eventually goes to a G League, Raptors 905. And they're a team that does a lot of good work through their G League program as well. All right, we're going to move to the San Antonio Spurs. San Antonio Spurs, busy for the Spurs, but they kind of like, this is like your buddy in your fantasy league who's like running back. Like they went big man, and then a guard in Jacoby Gillespie. But in the first round, Jaden Quaintance drafted there. We'll talk about him. Maybe could be one of the people we look at it like in 3-4 years now if they figure out his health stuff, is potentially the steal of the draft. Then I think to kind of protect against a case that doesn't work out, they grabbed Terrence Reed Jr. Well, I think Terrence Reed Jr. you could have thrown into the NBA Finals for 10 minutes and he would have been fine. I think he would have been perfectly okay. I think he, at the worst, is going to be in San Antonio, this may be his future, a very high-end backup big man. And, maybe at best, he's like a league average starting center, which is actually pretty good. Especially considering you drafted late in the first round. Then they went with Jacoby Gillespie. That's a guard out of Tennessee. I like Jacoby Gillespie. He's got some funk to his game. I think he's got some stuff. So you can talk about him in a minute. Then Malik Brown, another big, but kind of a little bit of a smaller other big compared to the other two guys, but just one more big guy. But he's much more of again, we're going to work with him. We're probably going to see him in the G League and work with him through there. So talk about Quaintance and Reed, kind of why you double dip at that position, only what it ended up being like 6 picks apart, I think.
So I was a little surprised by this, to be honest with you, but when you really think about it, I think it makes some sense, right? I can hear the argument for, getting a wing or somebody like that. I do think that range of the draft, the wings weren't the players that you were probably really going after. But to your point, I think Quaintance might have been the first big in the draft if he was fully healthy. And obviously, if he then would have been able to play. For people who don't know, he started his career at Arizona State, was literally so young that he wasn't draft eligible after his freshman year at Arizona State. Tore his ACL, I believe, at the end of that season. Tried to play at Kentucky this last year. He got to play 4 games. Like I don't have intel and sources and stuff, so I don't know what the medicals actually say, but I did think that San Antonio was a team that could take, quote unquote, take the chance on the medicals, Keith, with then also a ridiculous upside outcome if he ends up healthy. But to your point, if he needs a redshirt year, quote unquote, or a couple years, or to be brought along really, really slow, well, Terrence Reed Jr. is the guy that you can just plug and play and he's ready to go. And if this means that they're going to use Luke Cornett to go get some more wing depth or from floor spacing or a 4, whatever, I don't know. Or you just keep Luke Cornett for another year. This is just a roster that can do this because you can play Wembanyama more at the quote unquote 4 if you need to, right? And play him with some of these guys. So I know it's a little bit strange that you have Victor Wembanyama and you have Luke Cornett, and then you have three kind of centers, but because of his versatility specifically, and because we've seen how physical the NBA is and how big you need to be able to play at times, I do think it makes a lot of sense. I think Quaintance was just highest of upside swings. And then I think Terrace Reed Jr. was we really probably believe this guy can come in and play rotational minutes for us.
Yeah, and it is rare that you see teams, even though this is the point where it's like best player available, you're not really drafting for fit. Teams don't often double dip with a position because they don't know that Reed and Quaintance could ever play together. But that's not what it's about, because you've got a guy who eventually will be a 35, 40-minute a night big man where Victor Wembanyama will be, that's it. Like, we're good with one of the two big spots covered. And yeah, Cornette's got it covered for the next 2-3 seasons. No problem there. Yeah, by the time, and I think Quaintance will be, we're going to take it very slow. This may even be one where we may find out, kind of like Thomas Sorber and some others, where, all right, he's got this issue. We're going to really try to get it corrected. And then we'll see him down the line. Like you said, almost like a redshirt season. So yeah, I think I think they kind of had a home run draft considering they picked pretty late. Like I said, I like Jacoby Gillespie. He's not your traditional point guard. He's not your traditional shooting guard. Just a nice combo guard that can do some different stuff. I think Tennessee at times were kind of a rudderless team. And I thought he was the guy who would be like, all right, guys, I got this. Like let's everybody settle down. I'm going to take us where we need to be. And I thought he played well. I can't remember if they played in Hawaii, but whatever early season tournament it was, or that Thanksgiving tournament, whatever one they were in, he played really well in that. And that was where it's like, okay, all right, we kind of got some stuff here with Jacoby Gillespie. And then Malik Brown, that guy's just a worker. Like, you're like, just kind of fits with San Antonio, where it's going to be just come on in. You're just going to work really, really hard. And, you can trust, like, he'll rebound, he'll screen, he'll play some defense. There's not a whole lot there shooting wise, not a whole lot of, like, it's kind of, he's a catch dunk guy, in my opinion, for the most part. But yeah, I'm very high on overall on this Spurs draft.
Yeah, and I think another thing with some of these guys, when you get into especially second round undrafted free agents, like, what type of players do we want for our G League program, right? Like, what is the identity of our organization? And are these the type of players that will continue to, Jacoby Gillespie, a very disruptive defender throughout his career as well, right? With all of this offensive usage at Tennessee, averaged 2 steals per game on top of that. And so, listen, I think in the second round, even though he is, quote unquote, a little bit smaller of a guard, a combo guard, whatever you want to say, these guys do pop and figure it out from time to time, right? Not all of them, but some of them will. So, like, maybe he's a guy, or with Malik Brown, a big man that is really good defensively. Like, you could see his impact on the defensive end this last year at Duke. And so I think giving those guys a chance and then putting those guys around anybody else you're trying to develop in the G League, I think those are always good plays. I think those are smart plays for an organization.
Yeah, and you and I have talked a lot about this over the years. Sometimes you are drafting guys to be really good for your G League team, especially like if Quaintance is going to spend time in the G League kind of ramping himself up. Well, you want him to play with some good players so that he's able to kind of figure things out a little bit more and, be in a better place. Guys who can get him the ball, guys who can set him up with that. So I think, good stuff there. All right, we're going to move just so we keep moving here because I don't see anybody linked to them on the undrafted group, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move. We don't always say this. I thought the Kings had a fantastic couple days. Like, I am fired up for them. All right, I'm going to start here. My favorite player in this draft class, not that I had him as the best player or number one on my board, but my favorite player in the draft class, Darius Acuff Jr. I just think this kid is going to be awesome. I would have, on my personal draft board, I had him 4th behind DeBonsa, Peterson, and Boozer. I actually had him ahead of Caleb Wilson. If I was doing a mock draft, I never said that. I thought Wilson would go 4th all along. But I think Darius Acuff, guaranteed, he's going to show up at Summer League at least with, okay, Wizards, Jazz, Grizzlies, Bulls, Nets, Clippers. You're on my list. Like, that's how it is. And I'm going to make you pay for from now to the end of eternity for not drafting me. I did the way this guy plays. He just plays with such a level of confidence on the offensive end. I think he's an outstanding playmaker in addition to being a really good scorer, which is why I feel like he'll be kind of an ideal modern point guard. I know you're probably going to say it too and yell at me, but does he play any defense? Here's the thing, we don't know, right? And even John Calipari, his coach, which also, you don't ever really go wrong betting on a Calipari guard, right? That they generally turn out pretty good. He said, like, we didn't ask him to do very much defensively because he had to carry such a heavy load for us on the offensive end. I don't think he's going to ever make all defense, but I think he's going to be fine. And I think what he'll be on the offensive end more than makes up for it.
This topic will come up a few different times as we go throughout the breakdown of the draft. I had Acuff very solidly number 5. I shouldn't say solidly. I had him in a tier with Keaton Wagler, which is why when we talk about the Clippers, I'll say that I was perfectly fine that Wagler went above Darius Acuff at 5. To spoil this, I do not agree with the Brooklyn Nets decision. We can talk more about that later. I think Darius Acuff is really, really good. And here's my thing with Acuff.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes, of course.
I want to add something on the Wagler situation. I don't have a super huge problem with that either. I think Acuff is going to be a better player than Keaton Wagler. He could not play with Darius Garland.
Correct.
If that was going to be your backcourt. They're just both too small. You don't have enough, anywhere near enough defensively there. And they are two guys who they just would have been an awful compliment. Where Wagler's, we'll talk a lot about him when we get to the Clippers, but like his size just allows him to actually play with Darius Garland, if that's what you're building.
Yeah, agreed 100%. So listen, you can just read off the raw box score numbers and be impressed with Darius Acuff. Like it actually is ridiculous. But the two things that stood out to me the most was when I really started to look into the synergy numbers and his ability to knock down shots off the ball as well. Like he is a big time shot maker, whether on the ball or off the ball. And I realize you're drafting Acuff to be an on ball guy. Like I get it. But the thing is, Keith, just about everybody has to play off the ball at some point. Jalen Brunson probably just won an NBA championship because of his willingness to play off the ball at times. Not in clutch time. You give Jalen Brunson the ball and you tell everybody else to go stand somewhere else. But throughout, you know what keeps Karl-Anthony Towns engaged? The offense running through him. And the offense can run through Karl-Anthony Towns because Jalen Brunson will be a back screener, will be a cutter, will go back door, can knock down, catch, and shoot. I'm not comparing Acuff to Jalen Brunson. I don't think they're the same type of players just because they're quote-unquote small guards. The other thing, Acuff had a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio with his usage in that conference. So he can pass as well. And so that's what ultimately landed him at 5 for me is like, it's not just like this on-ball scorer. He's a creator. He's a shot maker all around. And I'm with you. I think the defense will eventually get to a place where it's just not like, oh my gosh, we can't build anything around this whatsoever.
Yeah, it'll just be fine. Like
yes.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think he at least has the physical build and size as a shorter guard that I think he can make it work. Like if he's truly invested in it, I think he's going to be able to make it work.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to use the Jalen Brunson thing here as well. But when people because we got this group of people who are like, you can't win with any small guards. And then it's like, well, Jalen Brunson just won a title. And he's like, oh, you think the guy, again, I'm not saying he's going to be ever as good as Jalen Brunson is, but it's about having the right guys around them. Yep. I'm going to use that as my backdoor into a lot of people have said like, well, how does he fit with Zach LaVine or Domantas Sabonis or DeMar DeRozan? Who cares? None of that matters. I don't even know if those guys are going to be on the team a week from now. Yeah. Like he fits really good with Keegan Murray, who I feel like will be there. I think that's a really good fit. And then he fits pretty good with the 2 other guys they drafted. I think that's going to be okay. I don't care about the rest of those guys because I don't think those guys are going to be there long term. So I think we're just in a place where don't focus on that. You get kind of caught up in the wrong thing if you're focused on who he's fitting with there. This is not AJ DeBonsa coming in and questioning, how's he going to fit with Trae Young, who just got a 4-year contract?
Yeah.
And the Wizards obviously want to keep. That's a different thing. How does Darren Peterson fit on a team that's loaded with vets? Different thing. This is it doesn't matter because those guys may be gone a couple of those guys may be gone by the time we're done with this episode. I don't even know, right? We're getting close to that. All right.
Real quick, I know we do have to move on. I will say I actually like the idea of keeping Sabonis a little bit more, just in general. I learned through a Pistons rebuild, Keith, that you can't just have it completely bare, and you have to, just like we talked about with the G League team, you have to give these young guys an infrastructure and vets to help them succeed. And I think Sabonis offensively would be a lot of fun with Acuff running off those DHOs, those gets. He can operate from the top of the key, letting Acuff run off floppies and all of those different things. So I will just say, listen, if you get a good trade, you trade Sabonis. I'm not saying you can't trade him. I'm saying of those three names, he's one that I actually think could help the growth and the development and the improvement of Darius Acuff. And here's the other thing. The new lottery system, you got to win some games to at least not be a bottom three team. So I don't think that you want to trade all three of those anyway. But yes, we definitely need to get to these other two guys.
Yeah.
Well.
So then the Kings trade back in. We had heard for a couple of weeks they were trying to get second first-round pick to trade back in with the Cavaliers, and they ended up with Alex Caravan, who I think Alex Caravan's just really nice plug-and-play guy. Again, older player, probably a little bit more ready, even maybe than Acuff, to step right in and play in the NBA. Because all Alex Caravan is going to do is work hard and shoot the ball. And you're gonna ask him to do a whole lot else. And the nice thing is, he's not such a shooter only that that's all he can do. You can also probably have him drive a closeout, have him make a decision if he catches in transition with the ball. He's a guy who can, he's not just going to be, let me run to a spot up, but he can also be that as well. And on the defensive end, he's going to get tagged like every other 6'6" to 6'9" white guy is like, all right, let me ISO this guy and take him to the basket. He can actually move his feet a little bit. And he's not, again, never going to be an all defense level guy, but he's not going to kill you in your rotation. I liken it to Sam Hauser with the Celtics. Whenever teams start ISOing Sam Hauser, the Celtics are like, go ahead. This is probably not going to go the way you think it is because he's actually an okay defender. Yeah. If it is Alex Caravan against Anthony Edwards, yeah, he's probably going to get cooked. So are 99.9% of the guys in the league. I'm not too stressed about it. But I thought that was a good pickup. And then Emmanuel Sharp, because I'll let you hit on both of them. Again, an older guard, but just a tough player. I think we're starting to get to a point where these Houston guards under Kelvin Sampson come out with a reputation of, they're going to work hard. They're going to play really hard. And they're probably going to make your life fairly miserable on the offensive end if they're guarding you. And I think Emmanuel Sharp kind of puts all of that together. And I think he's a guy who has been really kind of ready for this, where he's played with a lot of good players at Houston who have had the ball a lot more than him. And to put it very simply, he found a way to make himself draftable anyway.
Yeah. I like Caravan, the offensive stuff you talked about. I think he'll be a good positional defender. I think he has enough size and strength. I think this is what you're getting at with Hauser as well. There's a few of these guys that yes, there's going to be times where their hips are going to get opened and they're not going to have the quickness or the athleticism or whatever, but in general, they're going to be able to put themselves in position to just stay and, hold up. I wonder how much he can just play at the 4. I wonder how much that'll happen. And then I love Emmanuel Sharp as a second round pick. If anybody listened to me and Sam's offseason previews over on the Game Theory, YouTube channel, every time a team had a second round pick in the top 40 and we would talk about them, we kind of threw out some of the same names, and Emmanuel Sharp was one of them. I think he can really, really shoot the basketball, and he is good defensively. He got tasked with taking the other team's best perimeter to offensive player a lot, and he really took pride in that. You could tell, just the way he sat down in his stance and all of those things. So I think this is a great pick. We saw them hit on Maxime Renault last year. Looks like maybe even Dylan Cardwell. And so this is a team that all of a sudden is starting to draft really well. And this influx of young talent, they're probably going to have to add to it with a trade or a free agent signing or something at some point. But I'm kind of into the Sacramento Kings team right now. We'll see what ends up happening with Levine
It's
and
fun,
DeRozan
right?
and all.
That's fun
Yes,
to say.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm way more interested in watching them with Darius Akoff kind of running the show than it was anything that they've been the last year or so. Like that kind of tells you where it is. So yeah, I'm excited for them. All right, Bryce, this is where we make up ground.
Yes.
Because unless you know something, I don't know anything about Markel Sutton, who they picked up as a non-drafted guy. So I don't know if you have a couple thoughts on him or not.
I do not.
Okay. And then Portland. Here's the Portland Trailblazers draft recap. All right, we're moving to the next team. They didn't have a pick. They didn't trade in. Indiana was the other team that started the night without a pick. They did trade in one of my favorite players in the draft. We'll get into that when we get there. And then Barry Dunning Jr. They picked up in his Exhibit 10 guy. He looks like he's a wing. I don't have a lot of info there either.
I do not either, Keith. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, no, hey, this is all right. Because and here's the thing, guys. This is what Summer League is for. We'll start learning about some of these guys. We'll have a better idea as we move into the next thing. So now we're gonna go to, if I'm correct on my alphabet here, skills. Yes, me is writer. We're moving to the whoops. Oh, geez, I am struggling without Trevor here. We're moving to the Phoenix Suns. Suns, only one pick. They traded in for the pick at the end of the first round. They did give up cash to do it. They hard capped themselves at the second apron, but they got Koa Pete, local kid, Arizona. I think he grew up there too, if I remember correctly.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and Koa Pete for me is just the Suns under Jordan Ott and Brian Gregory as the GM. They are re-imaging themselves as this gritty, tough to play against, we're going to make life difficult on you team. And I think Koa Pete fits that almost perfectly with that. They don't have, I like Rasheer Fleming. I like Ryan Dunn, but they don't have anything locked in at the power forward spot. I think Koa Pete's probably going to have to be a 4, at least on the offensive end of the floor, maybe even a small ball 5 on that end if you play him with a stretch big. I'm not sure he's going to shoot. I don't know if you know anything about the whole, he reworked his jump shot mechanics and everybody was like, oh my God, this is, awful. I don't know what to do here with this. But yeah, I think this was a really good opportunistic move for the Suns where it was, this isn't going to cost us a lot to really buy this pick at the end of the first round. Let's go get our guy.
Yeah, we've seen Phoenix do this the last 2 years, right? They moved up to 31 last year to draft Rasheer Fleming. I realize 31 in the second round is different than 30 in the first round. Like, I understand that, but this is, something that they've done to go get, their guy. Here's the thing with Koa Pete. I think at this spot, this makes so much sense to go ahead and go draft somebody that does so many good things on a basketball court outside of being able to shoot. And listen, if you end up getting the right big man at the center position where he can play in the dunker and play some more of those big man spots and locations on the court, then he makes a ton of sense. If not, maybe you have to figure it out a little bit more, but I think he can. I think he defends. I plays with a level of physicality. I just think he's a good basketball player. The jumper is worrisome. I mean, he's one of those where it's like, I don't know that it ever gets there. Like, I don't know where I don't know him. Like, I don't, like this is where some of the intel stuff, I assume he's a really hard worker. I assume all of these guys are hard workers, but Keith, you and I both know that not every player in the NBA works at the same level, right? There is definite tiers to that. And so I don't know what his level is or how that may change, throughout the course of his career. But I think this was a smart play by the Phoenix Suns to get a talent like this. And I know we're not doing free agency stuff, but I thought the fact they got back Colin Gillespie and Jordan Goodwin already on good contracts speaks to the state of that organization internally, how they're treating their players, how their players feel about that, how they feel about just in general. I hear about this Oklahoma City all the time. I haven't heard someone say this directly to me with Phoenix, but it seems like they have a certain vision. They're trying to execute that, and it seems like their players are bought into it as well.
100%. That's huge. That goes way further than I think people realize. Once you get that buy-in from guys, it makes everything that much easier. I will also say they have my guy. Oh, so one of my favorite players in the league, I think, that's awesome. And I'm excited to see what they do with Cole Pete and how that figures out. We're in a good spot. We're gonna zip right. Oh, was there any undrafted guys for this?
Sam Hoiberg. The only reason I bring up Sam Hoiberg is this, like, his dad, Fred. Obviously, people know that name. Head coach at Nebraska, who had a really good season this year. I like Sam. I really, really like the way Sam Hoiberg plays. I don't think he probably ends up being an NBA player, but just a chance to give Fred Hoiberg and that Nebraska team a shout out for the season they had this last year.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, super fun run for them. I'll also say I remember sitting in a room where Fred Hoiberg was talking to a whole bunch of people at Las Vegas Summer League. This was in a classroom, like, convention type setting. And somebody said at the time, they said, would you ever go back to coaching in college? And his answer was, hell no. Like, I don't want to deal with kids and sitting in living rooms. And now, 2 years later, he's back in college. And
I will
he's
say,
a very successful college coach.
I will say something about Sam, in that we talk about, like, okay, what kind of G League do you have, right? Like, Sam Hoiberg shot 38% from three last year, 4.5 assists, didn't turn the ball over, plays extremely hard. You like guards that rebound? How about a 6 foot listed guard that had 5 rebounds per game last year, Keith? Like, my point here is I don't know that he ends up on a 2-way or whatever, but if Sam Hoiberg is running your G League team, I think there's real value in that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's pretty solid there. All right, we're going to go to Philadelphia 76ers. Only came away with one player, LeBaron Philon Jr. Will be the last, or maybe probably not the last, but the next to make the joke of, like, oh, so you redrafted Jared McCain, like, after trading Jared McCain away. Yes, it's funny because they're both smaller-ish guards that can do some stuff. Very different players. Like,
Agreed.
Jared McCain's this different guy, but I think LeBaron Philon comes in. Maxey and Edgecombe, and I made the joke. I'm like, well, somebody has to play the 4 minutes a night those guys sit. Like, but in being serious about it, Maxey's had injury issues. He's missed time. Tyrese Maxey plays a very physical game for a guy as small as he is, because he drives to the basket a lot, takes a lot of contact. He's probably always going to miss at some time each season. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to be 40 games a year or anything, but he's going to miss a little bit of time. VJ Edgecombe, as much as I love VJ Edgecombe, I think as long as he's your kind of secondary ball handler creator, you're in a great place. If you're asking him to do too much on-ball stuff, I think it could get a little messy. That's where having a guard like Philon, I think, really will help, because he should be an ideal third guard with these guys. I don't necessarily buy him and Maxey playing together quite as much. I think you could do it, because Maxey's obviously gotten very good at playing off the ball, playing with Embiid and Paul George and the like in Philadelphia, and he played a lot with Kyle Lowry. So maybe eventually, but yeah, I think Philon is just really solid pick to just be their third guard.
Yeah, I think that's a really good role for him. I don't think that that's going to overtax him. Philon was a name I alluded to earlier whenever we were talking about Acuff and the offensive usage, and then, how much energy you have left for defense. If you could tell me, I truly believe this, Keith, if you took LeBaron Philon's freshman year defense with LeBaron Philon's sophomore year offense, I think he might have been a lottery pick. Now,
that's a really good point. I think that's really good. Yeah.
The pushback people would have is he still only weighed 175 at the combine, and just filling out the frame. And again, I don't know how much people want to hear this or not, but we just saw a very physical NBA playoffs and NBA finals, and it's a physical sport and a physical league. And I do listen, he might just have practical play strength. I always bring this up with Chet Holmgren. Like, Chet has practical play strength, right? And so you don't have to be 260 pounds to be successful, but this is a fair concern with Philon. In the same way, I'll bring it up when we talk about Keaton Wagler as a fair concern. But we talked about Darius Acuff's numbers, and I realized Acuff was a freshman. But Keith, Philon averaged 22-5 on 50, 40, 80 in the SEC. You don't just do that by accident. And this is one of kind of my guys in the draft. I think this is a great pick for the Sixers. I think he will fill that role very, very well for them.
On a pretty loaded Alabama team too, where there were not as loaded as maybe his freshman year, which is why I think he took more of a backseat as a freshman,
Yeah,
as far
sure.
as like, I'm just going to play defense and I'll be a playmaker and all that, but still a good Alabama team that like had a lot of guys. And, it's weird because for my entire life, Alabama was a football school that's like now developed into this really good basketball program, really high end. So it's, but yeah, with Philon, I think, really good pick there. And I think if you're Philly, you're feeling pretty good. That's the guy you came away with. This is a good example of making the most of it, right? We had one pick and we made the most of it. All right, this one's going to be pretty quick. Moving to the Orlando Magic. They only came away with Isaiah Nelson out of USF. Played, I believe, right? Played at South Florida. Big guy, 6'10", I think. Probably that maybe he's a little shorter than that. I tend to go off of the listed heights still, unless I know it's ridiculous, because I think it's the stupidest thing in the world that we do heights without shoes. Because last I checked, nobody plays barefoot. I know why we do it, because then it's a fair thing, but whatever. We don't have time for me to do a whole stupid soapbox rant. Nelson was productive in the Big 12. No, I'm sorry, the American Conference. Put up some stat lines. This feels like on an Orlando team that's just pretty roster like capped. They've got it pretty full. This feels like a G League pick to me.
Yeah. I mean, that was my first thought here, was just like, okay, where's the path here with that organization in terms of what they have big guys already. But yeah, like this is your defensive, plays with a lot of energy, maybe even has like some switchability, and then like rim runner, those type of things. So like, I think an interesting, addition for Orlando, but there are a few of these archetype of bigs as you go throughout the draft, and it's always fun to like say, okay, which one ends up panning out, like, and really end up being a second big for a team. We've talked about Nelson, we've talked about Akpara, we'll talk about Onyenso a little bit later when we talk about Detroit. Not all of them are one-to-one. Like I don't want to make it seem like they're all exactly the same, but that's like, you even said this, you kind of like, you fall for these archetype of bigs, and it's like, okay, it would be interesting to study, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. What is the separator for the guys that end up making it in this kind of role and the ones that don't, And so, but that's kind of what you're looking at with Isaiah Nelson.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, we'll see, right? He's probably going to spend a lot of time with the Osceola Magic in the G League, and we'll see him kind of get in there, and that's where he'll go forward from. All right, we're going to move to now. This was much more happened here. The Oklahoma City Thunder. So the Thunder get Ade Mara at number 12. Then the Thunder traded up one pick because they can, right? Because they're like, oh, you need a couple seconds for us to trade up one pick to get Bennett Sturts. What's a little interesting there is they actually take on a little bit of money. They're not a whole lot, but he gets paid a little bit more because the one slot move up in the rookie scale. And then in the second round after trade, they end up with Otega Owe there, who is kind of interesting. So I think Mara, as things went along, there was kind of felt like after you get through the top four guys, the most consistently mocked thing I heard from the people who this is what they do was Ade Mara could go as high as 8 to Atlanta, and his floor is Oklahoma City at 12. And it was like over and over and over again. And sometimes it just is how it works out. This guy's like a legit 7'2", 7'3", but he's not a plotter. He doesn't like move like super slow. Like he's pretty fluid. He's a ridiculously good passer for his size, whether it's those kind of long bomb outlet passes or I like the way he passes off the move too, where Michigan ran some, which I'm kind of curious to see with Dusty May moving to the NBA. They ran some funky stuff because they played with three bigs a lot. We're going to talk about the other two that got drafted in the first round as well. Those three guys really, they were all asked to do a lot of different stuff moving around. And I think Mara did really well with that. And then we've seen in the workouts and things, starting to work on that jump shot. Be very, very careful with that. Let's just I get people get fired up when it's like, hey, he's making a bunch of threes. yeah, with me guarding him with a broom in his face. Like it's, in an empty gym. But
this is my favorite, real quick, Keith. This is my favorite time to be arrogant. Like if you gave me a week, I could send you a video where I make 45 out of 53s. Yeah. And I was a low major, below average Division I basketball player 20 years ago. My only point here is it does give me a chance to be arrogant for a little bit. So I apologize for everybody watching.
No, take it, man. But you're the only one in here who played Division I college basketball. So.
But it's also, my point is just be careful, to your point, about what you fully believe. Like he obviously is doing it, but there's a long translation from not having done it in college to then doing it on an NBA floor to doing it in the NBA playoffs,
Let's
having
take a couple and make them at Summer League in a couple weeks before we get to when we're fired up. That said, fine, do whatever you want with that piece of information. This guy's absolutely huge. He can actually move. I know everybody's linking this to, that's because they got to play Wemby. I mean, sure, there's probably something in there, but there's uncertainty at that big man position. Chet Holmgren, as much as Chet Holmgren can close halves, close games at the 5, he's not a 5, he's a 4. And they're not going to make him into a full-time 5. If he did, Chet Holmgren's not going to hold up. He's just not big enough physically. And the other thing is Chet Holmgren's never going to be big enough physically. Probably don't want him to be, because then he's not going to be as special as what he is. So Hartenstein's there for now, but then Mara, you got Thomas Sorbers, another developmental guy. Let's see what that looks like. I'm excited. I kind of hope he plays in Summer League. I know there's some maybe he will, maybe he won't. Hope he does, because I'd like to see what it looks like. Even like to see him and Mara out there together some, because I think that'd be kind of fun. But what Mara is that gives them that other big man in the pipeline that they can work with. And I think there's a good chance we see him as, I don't know, I'm going to say he's the third big in the rotation, because they tend to do some other funky stuff, but the true backup center for Isaiah Hartenstein. I think he may be that, if not day one, pretty early on in the season.
I mean, this is the thing with the Thunder, right? Is because it's going to happen when we talk about their other first round pick as well. No matter what position they pick, there's going to be like, well, how's he going to get on the floor? What about this player? What about that player? Like, that's just where Oklahoma City is at in terms of how they've built out this roster. And so it gives them a really good player, but it gives them flexibility if something happens with Hartenstein. I don't think so. I think Hartenstein will be on this roster, but what if somebody looks at this and now wants to give you a crazy offer for Jalen Williams, Jay Will, or, whatever. I don't want to, they have to draft where they have depth, because they have so much depth already. And it just is what it is. I like the addition of Mara there. I will say the one thing with him too, why I like him in Oklahoma City is I wonder, this is something I brought up with like Klingon, even, like how many minutes is he going to be able to play? And, he wasn't asked to do that a lot at Michigan, partially because of their depth and Morez Johnson Jr., but I don't know that his best role may not be suited for 20 minutes off the bench. And even if he's a starter someday, maybe it's a timeshare where he's only playing 26 minutes or something like that. It can get better. Like, I'm not trying to put a limit on him, but that was something as well, just in terms of like, I don't know, you can throw 32 minutes a game at him.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, and that's one of the things that was flagged by some teams in the draft process. And to be very fair, this kid went from, what is he at, UCLA?
Yeah.
Like, we don't even know other than he's huge, to all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this is, pretty great stuff with that. All right. Bennett Sturtz just feels like a really solid Thunder pick with him. I think with Bennett Sturtz, this is protection in case you have to trade Isaiah Joe, in case things get sideways with Casey Wallace's extension. I think you're in a spot where, this actually works out pretty good with him. He's ready to play right now. Like, you could plug him in and he's going to be pretty good in that position. And I think can play off the ball because of the way he shoots. This is a kid whose shooting numbers were pretty good. And if you watch his tape, he had to take a lot of tough shots at times, because he was kind of the grenade guy for Iowa, where it's toss him a ball at the end of the clock and he'll figure out how to get a shot on the rim. And he still shot pretty well. I just think, and just a smart player, just, going to come in and be a smart ball mover and all that. And I'll go back to his ability to play off the ball. Super important for OKC guards, because you got Holmgren and Jalen Williams. Never mind, of course, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to have the ball in his hands a ton as well. So I think this is really important with to have him in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you draft here is a guy that can play on the ball if needed, right? If they get in a situation like we saw in the playoffs, either due to injury or whatever, but also a guy that just has that floor spacing ability, the understanding of movement, relocation. One thing with Sturts that it didn't matter what team he went to. It's just he played in such a very specific and structured system with Ben McCollum for all 4 years of college, from Division II to Drake and then Iowa. I do wonder if there's a little bit of adjustment for Sturts, just because this will be a different pace of play and all of that. And then again, like, I know they have a bunch of guards, but like, it is what it is. And the other thing is, like, I mean, I'm glad Nikola Topic is like okay from, something very serious that wasn't basketball related. Like, shout out to that. But he had a back surgery a couple weeks ago. Some of these players at these positions, I hope they're healthy. I have no reason to believe that they won't be, but there have been some injury stuff in some of these spots. So Oklahoma City's in a situation where they can, I don't even want to call these guys insurance, because I think they're better players than that, but just adding this level of depth and talent is obviously a really good thing.
Yeah, big time. And then Otega Oweh.
Yeah.
I don't know what his path is to being on the standard roster. They're already too full as it is. So I think he's probably going to be in the G League. But this is just somebody, again, a kid, when you hear things about him, he's a worker. He wants to be a lot better. I think if Otega Oweh was either a lot more athletic, because he's pretty athletic, but like one of these hyper, super duper athletes, or was a fantastic shooter, he would have get drafted higher. As it is, this is like a mid-round, second-round pick who's pretty athletic. He can shoot it sometimes. You're just kind of working through. I almost think worked against him a little bit last year in school, because he had to do so much with the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
Where if he played with like better playmakers, he probably looks at like a better player. And I think that kind of hurt his draft stock, because instead of that being like, what could he be if we gave him more on-ball reps? Well, we saw it, and it's like, it's all right. It's not great. But it's still, this is a good guy to have in the second round.
I like after my guys I really liked in the second round, like a few of those names, Oweh was in the next group of, hey, when you get outside the top 40 or whatever, he was like right outside my top 40, but I think he's a guy that can really defend. I think if the jumper comes around, and then I don't think he plays on the ball like we saw at Kentucky, but I think that now applying to a secondary role, attacking a closeout, those type of things, I think he can do that. If you tell me 3 years from now he's developed with the Oklahoma City Blue and all of that, it's like, I wouldn't be shocked if all of a sudden they're like, hey, yeah, we think Oweh can, provide some depth to this team.
Bryce, their undrafted list is as long as like 10 teams drafted list.
It's
I just
crazy.
want to shout out two guys that I really kind of like and I think can play, interesting guys here. Josh Dix was is going to go on a two-way with them. Comes from Creighton, shooter, can do some things. I think he'll be an interesting player. And then I liked Lamar Wilkerson.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy who stepped up into Indiana. I think he started at the lower levels, if I'm remembering correctly, put up a bunch of numbers, and he looked pretty good at Indiana. So that's an interesting player to me. I don't know if you have any thoughts on any of the other guys.
No, those were the ones I wanted to call out as well. I'm pretty sure Three Rivers is where Wilkerson started, is JUCO, right? If I'm not
I think
mistaken.
so. That sounds right. Maybe.
I'll have to look that up. But yeah, he started at Three Rivers and Sam Houston State, finished his career at Indiana. And this is a guy that averaged 21 a game in the Big Ten. And how about 3-point shooting volume, Keith? Like, you talk about a league that values spacing and all of that. Over 6 attempts per game for his career, had 8.5 last year at Indiana. Really good percentage from the free throw line. Like, this is a guy that can really, really shoot the basketball.
Well, we're going to get into 3-point volume, not the next team, but the team after. And you know who's coming. If you can figure out when we get to the Pelicans, you know who I'm gonna like just gush over, one of my guys in the draft.
So I believe I feel like I had seen them at like the JUCO national tournament stuff. So it sounds like, I think Three Rivers is a public community college in Missouri. So looks like that's where he started his college career.
Perfect. All right. We're going to move to the New York Knicks. The Knicks did some moving around on the board.
Some,
they
Keith.
yeah, a bunch.
I didn't think they were ever going to keep a player.
They kept getting cash for picks, which my joke during the second round was like, well, they take some of this cash and say, all right, we can afford to go over the second apron to re-sign some guys. But Jack Cahill, guard out of Germany, comes in. We don't know, probably going to stay. My guess is overseas. I think the competition level will be better for him over there. And then Tyler Nickel, who is a wing forward out of Vanderbilt. He's probably going to either be on a two-way or in the G League.
Yep. Cahill was a guy that, I hadn't watched a lot until a little bit later into the process when it was like, okay, sounds like he's going to stay in as international prospect. So, 6'3" or something like that. 20 years old, I believe. The defense immediately stood out to me, like put some really good point of attack possessions together, some of his screen navigation, his passing continued to pop. And so, I think it's one of those for me. I thought he struggled in isolation, like trying to break down, defenders in those. So I think this could be really good. Like, hey, let's see if he ends up staying over there, letting him develop for another year, seeing how his game grows. Like, this is a guy that was under 40% from the field, under 30% from three from the field in his 65 total games. So I think letting him develop for another year could be good for the Knicks. And then you see what you have. And then I'm sure you were going to go in on Nickel, but like 3-point volume and over 40% for, a guy that's 6'6", 6'7", something like that. So, start in the G League and then see if you can develop the other aspects of the game.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is with him, is just if he's going to be a one skill guy, you need to be elite at that. And there are signs that maybe he'll be an elite shooter with that. So we'll see, but probably quite a bit in the G League with him. One thing with Cahill, just I'll mention it now, this was not a big international draft class. And I know like a guy like a Demara, he's from Spain, but he's not an international player because we count him as an NCAA player. Cahill was one of only, 6 international players drafted. One of only 4 that were early entry international guys. We'll get to the others later with that. So just something to kind of file away. It was a little bit different. Some of the very best international prospects are now playing in college. Which is something that we'll watch. We'll figure out how that develops. All right, we're gonna move to the New Orleans Pelicans. One of my favorite players. I remember talking to you about this guy a couple years ago because I actually got a chance to see him play in person. I was like, "Who is this guy?" And I was like, "Holy cow!" Which, like, as an aside, that's like one of my most favorite things is when you're watching for something else, and then you're like, "Who is this guy?" And like that guy, like, all of a sudden captures your imagination and you're locked on him. But Jaron Pierre Jr., this guy is a volume shooter. He is going to let it fly from anywhere. He's going to shoot. He's going to take a bunch of shots. He will take audacious shots. He's going to take shots where it's like, what are we doing here? But he makes a lot of them. And that's what really excites me about him. And he's got good size for a player who that's his role. Look, I don't think he's going to come right in and break into the rotation in New Orleans. But again, if you're a one skill player and your one skill is get buckets and you can hit from deep, it's not a bad skill to have. So I'm excited for Jaron Pierre Jr. And I'm really excited he got drafted.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, this is a player we were talking about, a couple of years ago. I'll have my story on that whenever we get to a player a little bit later. But yeah, scored over 20 points a game at Jacksonville State and then came to SMU, still averaged almost 18. The 3-point volume, like that kind of seems to be the theme here as we go through this portion of recapping the draft. And to your, Keith, he's a guy that rebounded the ball a little bit as a guard. I think he will pass. Sometimes these guys get the reputation as doesn't ever move the ball or doesn't pass the ball. I think he can move the ball and do those things. I don't think he's an on ball guy like creator or anything like that. And then my notes just said kind of inconsistent as a defender. You know what I mean? So we'll see. Yeah, where can that end up being in the NBA role? Can he get a little bit more into this 3-and-D wing where he's really, really a big time, shooter, maybe even just all around scorer, but also adds in the defensive aspect of that thing.
Yeah, it's funny. When I started doing this as more serious than just a hobby, I remember saying to somebody, I'm like, I don't know, but the guy can't really shoot. And he's like, he was the 50th pick in the draft or whatever, but a player goes, if he could shoot or if he could defend or if he could do this, he wouldn't be the 50th pick in the draft. He would have been the 5th pick in the draft. Like, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. You're not getting perfect players late. Correct. Hey, I got to apologize to our guy here. MPAT710 says, can't wait for Clyde's first nickel and diamond call when Kolek passes to nickel back-to-back on the way. Front office Thursday, NBA draft edition. Love it. Thank you so much, MPAT, for the support. I apologize. I missed that. We're on the Knicks section, but we got you there, which is that's a good call. That's exactly how it's going to go down, as nickel and diming for sure. All right, we're going to keep it moving here. We're going to go to the Minnesota Timberwolves. They traded out of the first round as part of the whole Julius Randle. Now it's turning into the Julius Randle, Bulls, Nets, LaMelo Ball trade. If you want to know more about what our thoughts are on the LaMelo Ball part of that, go all the way back to about an hour and 45 minutes ago when we talked that at the beginning of the show. We're not going to rehash it here. I still think Minnesota came out with two interesting players, considering they traded out. Isaiah Evans was, we're going to get to V-Star much later, but Isaiah Evans was probably the next guy who tumbled the most in the draft. Clearly teams had him on the list of guys they thought would go in the first round because he was in the green room, didn't go in the first round. And then Trey Kaufman-Renn. That Trey Kaufman-Renn is the absolute stereotypical, this dude was just, nails in college for 4 years, watched him play, watched him win a million games, just contributes to winning, just the kind of guy we like to draft in the second round and just have with our team. So I don't know how much more is there. Then Evans, I know, like, I was listening to Sam talk about him last night, and Sam's like, he just plays no defense at all. Like, and if his defense was anything, he'd be there. No, a lot of other people are like, should have come out after his freshman year. He probably goes in the back end of the lottery instead of waiting. And then here it is. He's, just kind of here. But I like Isaiah Evans. I think he can actually help a team probably right away as a shooter if they can kind of cover for his deficiencies.
So I would push back with Sam's there a little bit, where I do think he's at least gotten better. Like, I think his freshman year, he was not good at all defensively. And I don't even know if I would say like it was good or neutral or whatever. Like, he would be late on low mans. He'd have some screen navigation, some of those things. But I thought his like just engagement and energy level defensively was much better in his second year at Duke. And so I thought maybe NBA teams would see like, oh, here's some progression on the defensive end, and maybe we can foresee like, okay, this continues to grow and improve. Another one of those players where I do think the slight frame is at least worth bringing up. But when you talk about being able to really, really shoot the basketball and provide floor spacing, that is something that I think you can believe in with him. But to your point earlier, like, are you able to do any, like, what other value are you able to provide? Are you really able to, attack closeouts or, be a really good ball mover, make an impact off on the boards or anything like that? So I'm with you. I thought Evans was probably going to be a late first round pick, but I'm a little bit surprised he ended up going this far into the second round. I guess it wasn't that far into the second round, but
just into the second round.
Into the second round. I thought he probably was going to be a first round pick.
Yeah, I did as well. And I promise, guys, I mean, I love Sam, so I'm not beating up on Sam's comment on that, because Sam even said, I think Sam had him as a first round pick or as a very early second as well. So it was a little bit of a surprise that he slipped that far. I know you got to go check on the kids, so go do that, Bryce. I'll cover the next ones because I can gush about Malik Lewis for a couple minutes while you
love it.
away. So, all right, so we are going to go to now. After the Timberwolves, we're going to go to the Milwaukee Bucks. Let me get that set up. Our daughter just came home. If anybody can hear my dogs losing their minds, she just came home from where she's working as a camp counselor this summer. So our dogs are losing their minds that she's just pulling into the house. But all right, Milwaukee Bucks. They came away with Braden Burries. They picked Nate Ament. That is the pick that they're getting from the Miami Heat. And then they picked Malik Lewis. They actually bought that pick. That pick bounced around a little, and then they picked that pick up at the very end of the second round, rather, which was the 60th pick in the draft. But I think really, had a great night. I think the Bucks did really well. Braden Burries comes in. He's going to be a right away plug and play guy just because he plays defense. He'll make shots when the ball comes his way. He's very much a guy who he'll sacrifice for the team. I had to do that a lot at Arizona because I have so many guys that he just was somebody who could just knows how to play. And I think he's going to be really, really good with that. Bryce has Pistons curtains because he covers the Pistons. So that's why those are there. Then Nate Ament. So Brian, all right, I'll go back before I get into Ament. Braden Burries, what I said is, just a guy you're going to be able to put him in your rotation right away because he's just going to do helpful things. He's a guy who sacrificed, I think, a lot at Arizona because they had so many players. I think he was the guy who over his time there was like, all right, I'll be the one who plays defense. I'll be the one who makes the rotation and the closeouts while other guys did other things. But I think he's just going to be a phenomenal rotation guy right away.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Braden Burries. I had him right at this spot on my board, and I know we're about to transition to Nate Amen as well, but I like the way this ended up with Milwaukee, where they were able to, where they didn't have to take what I would call the upside swing on Amen at 10. They were able to take just like the guy I think is a better basketball player right now, Braden Burries at 10, and then take the little bit more of a swing on Amen at 13.
Yeah, and now I'm going to say this. I was probably higher on Nate Amen than most were by the time we got here. We probably all started about the same place because there was a point where this guy was being talked about as potentially the number one pick in the draft. Like, people loved this kid coming in. So I am in a spot where for Nate Amen, like it feels like that shine came off him a lot more for a lot of other people. And for me, it's like, he got covered in a little bit of grime, but wipe that off, and he still looks pretty good to me. And I thought he got better as the year went along, too. I know he had a couple rough moments late in the season, but this guy is somebody who I am I don't know. It's just a lot of talent there, and a big wing, can do some stuff with the ball in his hands. I'm excited. I'm excited to. Maybe the pressure's off a little bit because he went a little later in the lottery. He's going to go to a Bucks team that's kind of in transition, not kind of, very much in transition. And going to figure out. I'm excited for Nate Amen to land there. And then I'll let you go in a second here, but Malik Lewis, every year in once we get into like middle of December or so, I write a piece that's about 10-day call-ups and two-way movement that we may see. And Malik Lewis, so I watch a lot of G League because the G League's cranking by then and you get a lot of stuff. And I watch a lot of G League stuff and talk to a lot of people. When I was watching Mexico City a couple years ago, I was like, who is this guy he's just everywhere? Like, he's crashing the boards. Sometimes he's just flat running into guys on the defensive end and committing fouls, but he's just playing so much harder than everybody else. And I found out it was this kid, Malik Lewis. And I was like, well, he's somebody to keep an eye on. And like, well, he's not going to be a call-up guy because he wants to preserve draft eligibility for later. Then he went and played overseas for a couple seasons. People in the NBL loved him and raved about him. Played in Australia the last couple of years. At the 60th pick in the draft, literal last guy drafted, you can't ask for much more than this. Like, I think this guy's going to be an outstanding player to watch develop and whatever he becomes. But with this, because if your one skill is I play super hard and I'll play defense, that is probably the best of the one skills to have, for a player. So that or shooting, it's 1-1A with that. But yeah, I'm excited with that.
Yeah, I think Milwaukee had a really good draft overall, Keith. Again, I like the Burries pick. Ament, like, I struggled with him. He moved up and down my board quite a bit. And it's like, listen, there's an outcome here where it just like really works. Like, he figures out that offensive role. He figures out the physicality. He ends up being a good defender. I think the tools and the potential is there on that end of the court as well. So I like what they did there. you mentioned Malik Lewis at 60. That's a guy I have scouting notes going back to his time with Mexico City when he was playing with them. Like he was on my radar then as just like this two-way wing / forward that is oftentimes what you're looking for as an NBA team to round out your roster and be in your rotation. And then they also got Rafael Castro on two-way, I believe.
Which is a great value on a two-way.
Yeah, a big out of George Washington that had a couple really, really productive seasons there after not as much at Providence, but shot a really good percentage, rebounds, offensive rebound impact. I think he has some offensive skill level and then like defensive disruption. So like he's going to play hard. Again, I think I'm interested to sometimes with bigs, I'm interested to see how the offensive skill level, translates. Like, does the passing end up being able to show up or, those type of things? But I think, Castro is a really good pickup for them. So I really like what Milwaukee did in this draft.
Yeah, I think they had a home run night for a team that is coming off trading away their franchise guy. I don't know that they could have had a better night with the way this all came together for them. We did skip. Give me like a minute on Melvin Council Jr. Is doing looks like probably an Exhibit 10 deal with the Pelicans.
Oh, so yeah, I was gonna say I didn't think he was with Milwaukee. So obviously played at Kansas last year. Another player that's like been through a few different schools. I think the thing with him is he's just never been able to really space the floor. Even this last year was at 30%. He was under 40% from the field. But guards that rebound, Keith, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. If with these guys, I feel like we end up repeating ourselves sometimes. Like, man, if they could shoot, if they could space the floor, it really does come down to that. But I think he does the other things pretty well where truly, if he was able to, start knocking down shots at a high enough level, he might have a chance to, carve out a role. I think, if nothing else, like we've talked about, you put him on your G League team and feel good about him having as a guard with your G League.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. All right, let's go to the Miami Heat. We're gonna start going a little quicker through these. This is both of our faults. We love this stuff. We'll talk forever about it, but I have something I have to do coming up, so we're gonna not like a sentence, but we'll go a little bit quicker.
Sure.
Ryan Conwell, Miami Heat. They trade up to get him. This was, I think, a really nice pickup for the Heat. I think he's probably gonna play, pretty quick in Miami because he can shoot, and that's what this Heat team needs.
Yeah, a guy that can really score the basketball. And when you talk about quote unquote shorter guards, I think he was, I don't know what I wrote down 6'3" for his height because I always just go ahead and add a little bit because you play basketball in shoes, but whatever. Like he's built very well. Like he is a strong guard. Like this is the build that you're looking for in that type of player. 3-point volume, Sam, 7 attempts. Sam, I knew I was going to do this. Keith,
I'll take it.
7, and almost 10 3-point attempts per game this last year at Louisville. Just a guy that can really, really score the basketball, rebounds a little bit as well. This was a nice pickup for the Miami Heat.
Guy who also showed up consistently for Louisville, who didn't always have the most consistent guys there. We'll talk about that with Mikal Brown when we get there. Now, the Heat, we do want to spend a minute on their undrafted guys. These guys could come into play for Miami, maybe more than a couple other teams because they've got a lot of roster spots to fill. And the Heat also have been maybe one of the best developmental teams, especially through the G League over the last several years. So the guys who stood out to me, Trey Donaldson.
Yep.
They've got a lot of familiarity with him in Miami. This is a kid who can just a solid guard, just a nice guard prospect to have in the mix. Keyshawn Hall finished out at Auburn. If I remember correctly, I think he played at UCF, right?
Yep.
You're correct. Yeah, because I thought I was like, I think he played there. Just another guy, his scoring's a little all over the place. He's a little erratic, but can do some stuff with the ball in his hands. Again, plays really hard. These are the kind of guys the Heat have had a lot of success with over the years. So if you're going to show up, you're going to work hard, you're going to play hard, they're going to have success with you. And then Trey White out of Kansas, another wing size player, guy who played a lot of big games because he played at Kansas. So it's kind of an interesting group that they're bringing in on the undrafted side.
Yeah, like I think the one that's most interesting to me there is Keyshawn Hall. Just kind of watching him. I think somebody had me when he was at George Mason watch him, and it was like it was interesting then, just like the way he went about scoring the basketball, and he was able to do that at every level. Like he went from George Mason to UCF to Auburn, and his points per game went up at all three stops. The 3-point shooting got a little bit better with a little bit more volume, a guy that can get to the free throw line, a guy that can really rebound. I think with Miami, Donaldson's another guy that really scored the basketball this past season. So I'm not saying they specifically were like went out looking for that, but that is what they ended up with some of these guys.
Yeah, without a doubt. All right, let's move to the Memphis Grizzlies. We already talked about the Isaiah Stewart trade, but as a part of their whole draft night, we're not going to spend a lot of time on Cam Boozer. I think my thing with Cam Boozer is just my quick thing. I think he has the safest floor of any player near the top of the draft. Feel confident 10 years from now, we're going to be talking about Cam Boozer as if nothing else, a very good starting level forward in the NBA, and probably more than that. So that's the baseline that I think he will hit. I think his high levels outcomes are all-star level big man who can do a lot of different stuff with the ball. And he's going to be actually a little bit better away from the ball than people are maybe thinking right away. But then the rest of their draft, we mentioned this a little bit when we were recapping the Stewart deal, but they traded back from 16 to 17, picked up 2 second-round picks to do it. Then they traded back from 17 to 21, picked up 3 more second-round picks in a trade with Detroit. And then they and then turned picks into Isaiah Stewart, which sounds like picks just going right back to Detroit again. So why they didn't just do it Stewart in the beginning, I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but whatever it was, deal went down. I think process-wise, the Grizzlies had a great night. Players-wise, I think they also had a great night. Cam Boozer, again, safe player. You're getting somebody who's going to be really, really good. Second first-round pick, especially after trading back. Go with Kareem Lopez. That's like, let's shoot for the moon here. Maybe this kid turns out to be awesome and we look great. And if he doesn't, well, we still got Boozer. And then you kind of go back around to the safe pick with Richie Saunders, assuming he's healthy. May not be healthy right away. And I think what this one is going to be, little the way it kind of started with Jemai Meshack, which is also funny because wasn't Jemai Meshack one of Sam's like big favorites in last year's draft? And I know he loves Richie Saunders. So Saunders, I think, is probably also going to start out as like a domestic draft and stash, which means they may not even sign him to anything and just put him in the G League while they own his draft rights, but he'll get to rehab his knee and do all the things he needs to do. Again, me as writer. Tore his ACL kind of late in the process. February. So it's not like he's maybe January, maybe February, maybe March. He'll probably be ready to go again. We'll see. But I think for the Grizzlies, I'm not looking for anything out of Richie Saunders this coming season. But after that, I think he steps up and becomes a big part because I know that shooting skill is going to translate.
Yeah. Cam Boozer, home run at pick 3. I think he fits really nicely. I think one thing I always just quickly on that is I have no concerns with him and Zach Edey playing together. I've heard this brought like Cam Boozer doesn't necessarily need to play with his back-to-back the basket in the post. Like Cam Boozer is a skilled forward that can space on the weak side. We saw him run inverted ball screens. Like Cam Boozer is just a very, very skilled forward big. I think him and Zach Edey playing together offensively is going to be perfectly fine. Kareem Lopez, I was a touch lower on him than others, but the fact they ended up trading back and taking him at 21, like that makes that pick more than reasonable. Like if they would have taken him at 16, Keith, I might have pushed back on that a little bit. Just because, again, I'm a touch lower on Lopez. I want to see where the defense ends up. Where's the shooting and the floor spacing end up? But at 21, I love the physicality he plays with, like being able to play as a true 4. And then Richie Saunders is just a great pickup for them. You probably, my guess is you're going to have to redshirt him, which I know people are going to say, like, he's already going to be 25. Like, I get it. I understand all of it. Not only can he really shoot the basketball, I think he can attack a closeout. I think he gets to the right spots defensively. I really came around to he would have been a very solid first round pick for me if he just simply hadn't torn his ACL. Like even at his age, he still would have been a first round pick for me. The ACL, I knew I still had him in my top 30, knowing that he probably was going to go into the second round.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think especially in the second round, I don't really even care about the age because
Sure.
I think he's going to be able to play for the next, 10 years without a whole lot of worry because it's not his game should age just fine. His whole thing will be, can he hold up at all defensively? Like otherwise he still can have a good career. He's just going to be a limited bench shooter kind of guy, but you still need those guys. And in the second round, that's a win. The thing I like with Kareem Lopez is for a kid who's only 19, he's already been playing against grown men for a couple years. He's been the guy who's going to be, think he's going to be a little bit more ready physically than maybe a lot of guys his age. I think he's going to come in ready to go. And there were, I know talking to people in Australia, there were sometimes when he maybe took a little extra hit here and there because people were like, who's this 19-year-old kid from Mexico trying to play in our league? Like what's happening here? And he got beat up a little bit. So but always came back, right? Always like, all right, knock me down. I'm going to come right back and work. And I think that's really good. But like you said, it's going to come down to defense and shooting for him. Can you do some other stuff? Undrafted guys from Memphis.
Carson Cooper did end up on a two-way, the big from Michigan State. But okay. Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot.
At some point, you don't need 900 bigs, Memphis. This is not like it's. I think somebody might have told somebody there, "Hey, tall guys are really good to have in basketball," and they just like, "Okay, get them all." They're like turning into the Purdue of the NBA with their big man calculation. All right, let's go to. There's people in the room, so let's get here with this. We're going to the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't think I did their banner because I was doing something else, so I apologize. Los Angeles Lakers first round pick Cameron Carr actually ended up being their only pick. We could talk a little while I get this ready to go before we even get into Cam Carr. A lot of people are like, what happened? Like they bought a pick and then sold the pick later. They got into the draft. I think it's been pretty well reported now with the idea of like, let's try to get Henri Visar. Like he was falling. If he falls, we're going to get him. And I think what they did was, all right, he went. Now we're going to pivot and get out of the draft. And my guess is it'll probably come out maybe cash neutral with this. It's cash really just comes down to, is your owner okay with you spending cash? And if it comes out cash neutral, then no harm, no foul. I thought Cam Carr was a really good pick for them. Slipped some. I'm seeing this tends to happen with the Lakers, like biggest steal in the draft. He slipped like 20 picks. And it's like, he didn't slip quite that far. He slipped maybe 10. I think a lot of people had him probably like late lottery was his like high end range, but I do think that's a good pickup for them. Again, 3-and-D guys. That's what you need around Luka with a re-signed Austin Reeves as well. I think that's a pretty good pickup for the Lakers.
Yeah, I like that for the Lakers. Cam Carr is a guy that, you mentioned the ability to really shoot the basketball. I will also mention just a big time athlete. Like this dude can, and it wasn't just the combine measurements. If you watched him play last year, this last season, you already knew that he was that level of athlete with some of the things he was able to do. Obviously, he's a 3-year player. Some people may just be getting familiar with him, but he had 2 years at Tennessee before he eventually transferred to Baylor and then kind of had this breakout season there. His dad actually played some in the NBA. So I think that was a really good pick for them. I had him in my top 20. So I think that's great value for the Lakers with Cam Carr. I'm interested to see what the defense is. I think he'll be disruptive defensively. Another player, the little bit slighter frame. Is he going to be able to hold up at the cutoff point and those type of things? I at least have to mention it, but I think that's a great pick for the Lakers.
Reminds me of a smaller Trey Murphy a little bit.
Yeah,
like just,
sure.
Kind of he's a run and jump guy who can also shoot.
Yeah.
I don't know much he's ever going to do with the ball in his hands, which is where Trey Murphy has really expanded. And Trey Murphy's just a better defender, I think, almost solely because he's bigger than Cam Carr. But yeah, I think this is a good get. Now they've done a lot of work on the undrafted market. We started out the show joking about getting Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and in Robbie Avila. But I think Robbie Avila is an interesting guy to have
Sure.
in your kind of program there, just because, again, can do a lot of things, can kind of dribble, pass, and shoot for a big. You know, some people are already going crazy with like, this guy's just like Jokic. Well, if it was just like Jokic, you wouldn't have gone undrafted. But yes, I could see where you're getting to that. But it's like, if the poor man's Jokic was also poor, now you're down to like where Robbie Avila is.
Well, and my other thing, like Young Hansen was also supposed to be the next Jokic, and like he may still be, but like it's not like that played out super well in his rookie season. I'm not trying to, throw shade at him, but like it just, Jokic is a comp that often makes me nervous. I said this the other day.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that one.
The three comps that make me nervous are Jalen Brunson right now, Nikola Jokic, and Draymond Green. If that's the comp for a player, I want to watch some more film, because that makes me a little bit nervous, because I feel like those players are a little bit of outliers.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. William Kyle, another interesting big guy to kind of take a flyer on. We'll see what that looks like. Peter Suter, who had a really nice year. It's funny when somebody initially told me about him, they're like, we call him Suter the Shooter. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cute, even if it's like not that great of a nickname. And if you gave me that nickname, I'd probably give it back. But he's like interesting player coming off Miami, Ohio team that became like the nation's darlings because they ran that undefeated string for so long. Chase Ross, the long line of Marquette wings who just play super hard, defend, and will give you everything they got. And then AK Okereke, I think, just like kind of another interesting guy that is, just there. I think for a Lakers team that who knows where they're going with their roster this summer, like just loading up these guys for the G League in two ways, and that I think pretty good.
Yeah. AK is the guy that started out at Cornell. I actually had somebody, say something to me about him a couple years ago. Ended up on this Vanderbilt team that, while rightfully so, Tyler Tanner got a lot of the draft buzz until he ended up going back to school. We've now mentioned a couple other Vanderbilt guys, right? And Tyler Nickel and now AK. And, he had 3 years at Cornell. Now he's, the 1 year at Vanderbilt, shot 40% from three. Some of the, creation, the defensive disruption, all of that stuff didn't show up. You just wonder, like, is there another, jump for him? Even when I see players who it's only been 1 year of, Power 4, Power 5 basketball, I do wonder, like, okay, is there going to be then another leap for them, either with their ability to shoot the basketball or whatever. So I think these are really nice pickups for the Lakers in terms of two ways and exhibit 10s and all of that.
And if you all want a lot more on these guys, Trevor is cranking out video recaps on every single guy so far. I'm not even trying to be funny or facetious about that. Like, he really is. He's doing work. He's part of the reason why he's not with us right now is he's working on some of that stuff to get that done. All right, we're going to the LA Clippers now. Clippers, maybe so to the surprise of some, stuck at number 5. They drafted Keaton Wagler with that pick. Yes, that's how you say it. It's not Wagler. It's Wagler, I promise you. It's also not Wagler, as some have tried to kind of make it out like he's this German kid. But it's Keaton Wagler. Then they drafted Baba Miller. I'm really interested in your thoughts on him, because that's a guy some people were like over the moon for. Nick Martinelli. Nick Martinelli was like a riser, kind of almost late in the process. I think as other guys went back to school and the like, it was like, hey, Nick Martinelli's not too bad. Then Narcisse Ngoy, here's kind of the tweak on this one. The Clippers drafted a guy who's enrolling at Auburn this coming season. And this is the new rules in effect where the NCAA says if you are a true early entry candidate, then you don't go drafted, your college career is over. But if you're auto eligible for the draft and you haven't already played your college eligibility, like Ngoy is, because he's 22, you can enroll in college and play. Guys, that's the extent that we're going to talk about Narcisse Ngoy, because I don't know really much about him other than a couple people told me he's pretty athletic. Let's see what it looks like after a year at Auburn. Like, that was the extent of what I got for a big man. But Wagler, I think was the right pick for the Clippers, even though I like Darius Acuff better, as I said. I think he's the better fit alongside Darius Garland.
Yeah, I don't have to go in this in depth, but I mentioned this. Like, I had those guys in the same tier, and to me, whenever they're in the same tier, even though I had Acuff a spot higher, I think you can talk about fit. If the Clippers thought that Acuff was in a different tier and wanted to take him and then have to trade Darius Garland or whatever, I would have understood it. I just think Keaton Wagler is going to be a good enough player and is in the same tier with Acuff that it was perfectly reasonable to go ahead and draft him. I like Wagler's ability to play on and off the ball. Another guy, a little bit slighter frame, but I think he already showed that he has an understanding of how to play with physicality, and I think he'll do so effectively once he continues to add to that frame. Sneaky good offensive rebounder. Always like to mention that with Wagler. And I think the other thing was just like showing in just his freshman season, starting off the year playing so much off the ball and then transitioning throughout the year into the high usage on ball is really impressive. And that's something that really stands out to me.
Yeah. And this kid, Wagler was, he was like the 200th ranked prospect or something.
Yeah.
Coming in to the year. Like, nobody was super high on this kid. Even I heard, who's the Illinois coach now? It's God, his name fell out on me. Brad Underwood even said, like, yeah, he was better than we even thought he would be. And like, that's his coach, right? And a lot of times coaches are like, no, we saw it, we saw it in that gym back, a couple summers ago and whatever. I mean, just really knows how to play. Like, there's just a smoothness to his game. Again, good size. This is another guy who I think there's some comps, like you used it earlier. There's a little bit of Devin Booker-y style in his game where it's just kind of smooth in the way he plays there. Go watch it. I think it was Purdue. He went bananas against a Purdue team that, like, nobody scores on Purdue, right? Like, that's their whole thing, is like they hold people in check. And he went absolutely crazy with that, but he's going to be really good. I think the right pick. Baba Miller, there was all over the board. There were people who were like, this dude is a first round pick. No doubt. He's got all the skill in the world. He's 6'100", and people love that he's big and all this stuff. And then there were other people who were like, I don't think this kid lasts more than a couple years in the NBA. So it's all over the place with him. I see a lot of Fiondu Kamagele in this guy, which is kind of funny because they both spent time at FSU, both got drafted by the Clippers. But these are like 6'11" guys that are like, watch me shoot 3-pointers, guys. Here we go. I will say in his last year, I think Miller got more serious about his defense, using his size to a better effect. I think he got better with his handle, better with his passing, and I think his shot selection got better as well. I think what happened was he was a guy who, through a couple of cycles of draft feedback, probably got told, you're not an NBA player. And then I think he went back to school and got a lot more serious in his final year. And then I already talked about Martinelli. This kid is just a grinder. He's such a funny scorer too, because you think like this guy is like, oh, he's going to shoot a pull-up jumper. Nope, he's going to take one extra dribble or step and throw a floater that's going to go in from every possible angle, any arm like angle. It's like that. It's like the baseball pitcher where it's like he throws from overhand to the slot to the full sidearm to whatever. You can't get a feel for his arm angle at all. Like, that is where I think it's I think Martinelli's just a funky player, and it'll be fun to watch him develop in the G League.
Yeah. This is what's fun about doing this for as long as I have now. I scouted Baba Miller going into his freshman year at Florida State. I went and found film all the way back, and then obviously didn't go super well. He stayed there for another year, went a little bit better, then went to FAU, and then this last year at Cincinnati. And honestly, he was a little bit off my radar in general, Keith. And then all of a sudden I saw his name popping up a little bit. I'm like, I better go check this out. And it's like, oh, he's averaging double-digit rebounds. Like, he's using this size, this length, this athleticism to really make an impact on the boards. And the pass, I'm glad you brought up the passing. The passing looks a little bit better. My thing with Baba Miller is like, I just don't have any reason to believe the jumper's going to get there. Like, guys can always improve, right? He's still just 22 or whatever. I think he's actually, 22. But I do think that I think he could carve out a role in the NBA if he sticks to kind of what he found this last year at Cincinnati. And then the one thing with Martinelli, his touch numbers are really good on synergy, on quality volume. And whenever I say touch numbers, it's like the little runners, floaters, hook shots, those type of things.
That's what they all are.
Yes,
It's runners, floaters, and hook shots.
Yes, I'm not sure if he figures out a role or not. I'm not sure what the defense ends up being, but I ended up being a little bit higher on him than what I thought I was going to be coming into the season.
His game's kind of what my game is like when I last played. Now is just a lot of runners and hook shots. He moves more than I do, and he's like got about 12 inches on me, so we're good. All right. When we're gonna move, because we're gonna move. We already talked about Fletcher Lawyer because somebody asked about him.
Yep.
Earlier, so we're gonna go to the Indiana Pacers. Pacers traded in. They got Braden Smith. Here's my for months I've talked about when anybody asks about Braden Smith or who's a player I like. I was like, Braden Smith is a worse defending, better shooter, better passing TJ McConnell. And guess where he went? He went to Indiana, where he's gonna apprentice like under TJ McConnell. Like, it's just crazy. This guy is tiny, but I don't think there's a better passer in the draft. Like, it's just, I mean, he just sees everything. His angles are great. He will run pick and rolls and deliver the ball spot on over and over and over again. I guarantee you Zubac, Siakam, Obi Toppin, they're going to love playing with this guy when they get to play with him on the floor. Defensively, I have no idea if he's going to hold up. He's tiny. McConnell's thing is McConnell's just a pain in the ass. Like, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. When if you're watching, guys, whenever a college coach or even a professional coach tells you this guy's just a pain in the ass, it means that's a compliment usually, because it's just like he's just up into you all the time. He's always underneath you doing things, just kind of bugging you with that. So I think I think he's really gonna be if he can live up to what McConnell's been, this is a home run get for Indiana, because I like Braden Smith quite a bit.
Legitimately in my notes, worst case scenario is he is a great G League point guard to run your team. Like that wasn't after he got drafted by the Pacers. That was my, just pre-draft notes on him. I do wonder if defensively, like, he leans into the digs, passing lanes, like all of the little like disruption and stuff like that, when he doesn't have to worry about getting in foul trouble, because he had to be on the floor for that Purdue team because he was just so good and so important. So I like that for Indiana. They also brought in another, smaller guy in Tamin Lipsey out of Iowa State, who can really, really defend, can really run the team for you. So, like, if Braden Smith isn't down running your G League, I think Tamin Lipsey can do it. And then Keba Keita is the big from BYU. So if you watch any, AJ DeBonso, Richie Saunders this last year, Keba Keita was the big for that team.
And they did all the dirty work.
Yeah,
for that team.
Yeah, it like real bouncy, can really rebound and all of that. We'll see what that ends up looking like at the next level.
Yeah, and I also think Rink Mast is an interesting guy
Nebraska
in the G League as well, out of Nebraska. Yeah, he is. I think with him, it's just going to be can you get him to a place where he can do some stuff on both ends of the floor, and then you just kind of figure it out with him. But yeah, I mean, good. These are good players to kind of watch for. All right, Houston's one draftee was Bruce Thornton. I'm not super high on Bruce Thornton. I wasn't at all in the process. I know over on Game Theory, Sam really liked Bruce Thornton a lot. My issue is he's just very small, and I don't know what he is. And I don't always have a problem with guys like that, but I don't know that he's going to be able to get shot off in the NBA regularly. And that's what worries me. And I don't see enough point guard in him if he can't get his shot off. I'm a little nervous about Bruce Thornton. But go ahead on Bruce Thornton, and then I will wax poetic about their two-way pickup.
No, I was gonna say this is definitely your two-way team for sure. We actually have very similar notes on Bruce Thornton. Listen, I'm not gonna sit here and critique a second-round pick. That would be crazy of me. I will just say, I definitely had players on the board that I would have felt a lot better about taking. Like if I was going to trade up to 31, But I think, there's a chance Bruce Thornton's a 2-level scorer. I think he's really reliant, like just on the jumper in general. Not sure about like being able to separate, break down the defense, those type of things. He is very well built. Like I talked about this earlier. If you're going to be a little bit smaller, having the frame that he does. I'm also with you in that I don't know, like he's a true creator. But obviously Houston saw something that they really liked.
I will say he's already for a little guard if you're going to be his size. I'm not comparing him to Jalen Brunson. I'm only saying Jalen Brunson is very good at this. You could have the shoulder to use to create space. And
sure.
Jalen Brunson's really good at that. Thornton does have a little bit of that in his mix. All right. Quadir Copeland. This was a guy I knew really nothing about him until I was actually watching other players. And I'm like, this dude on NC State is like killing guys. And he seems kind of big. And then I went and looked, I'm like, oh, his measurements are pretty good. And then he's piling up assists. And I like players that can do a lot of things. And Quadir Copeland can do a lot of things. If the shooting is real that he showed at NC State this year, this is a home run 2-way pickup for the Rockets. And he will not stay a 2-way player for very long. I think he could be an NBA backup guard. Teams love guards with size, especially guys like on-ball guards with size. And I think there's a chance that he plays himself kind of off this 2-way and into a standard deal. Like I think this kid can really, really play.
Yeah, I mean, it just the intersection of size and then skill makes it very much worth it. So he was a player. I remember you texting me about him, right? Like this is what we do. I mean, obviously we talk about all sorts of things and even non-basketball things at this point. But I remember you texting me about him and just a very interesting player. Like he was one of those guys that's like, this is definitely a second round pick. Like this is a guy that should end up in the second round, should end up on, a 2-way deal. And then, Oscar Clough is just, one of the Purdue bigs.
Yep. Just another in the long line. I mean, his best path is maybe he works himself into being a backup center at some point in the league. All right.
And real quick, I know Copeland didn't get drafted in the second round. But for me, it was like he should have been a second round pick. So just
for me too. So that means we're both right and the league was right. All right. Golden State Warriors. Draft was Yaxel Lendeborg in the first round. It's Leger, right? Is how you say it. Jones in the second round. Lendeborg he was one of those prospects who there was a little bit of kind of like controversy about because he's a much older player. I've already seen some of the jokes. He's older than some of the guys on the Warriors roster already. And people are like, oh, him and Draymond Green can chat together about, what it was like back in the day. But, it's like he's not quite that old, but he will be 24 when the season starts. But this guy, again, talk about a do everything player. He can do everything really well. I don't know that there's one thing other than maybe passing for his size that he does at an exceptional level. But when you're talking in the late lottery and for Warriors team, their bigs need to be able to process things. You need to be able to do a lot of different stuff. I think he's a pretty good pickup. And I will say this, his final year at UAB, maybe his only year at UAB, but at least
two years at UAB.
But his second year, he was like their only big. So he played kind of like a pseudo 5, I guess would be the way it was. And he did hold up okay. Because I think he might actually end up being better guarding up a position. At Michigan, he played the 4, but that was such a funky, like 3 big lineup that like everybody did everything. So I think he's probably more of a 4 who can guard 5s than a 4 who can guard down and guard 3s at the NBA level.
Yeah, I love this pick for the Warriors. I think he does fit into their offensive scheme because what did you say? Like maybe his best offensive skill is passing. Well, that fits perfectly, right? As long as he's able to knock down shots. But I think he can attack closeouts. I think he can get out in transition. He really rebounds. I think he can really defend. I think he probably is like, I would call him a forward. Like, like say he almost played the 3 at Michigan because Merez was the 4 and Mara was the 5. At least
that's what I meant to say, the 3.
Yeah. But I think that just shows his versatility. This was my pick for Golden State for a lot of the process. I think Yaxel Lendeborg is a really good basketball player.
And then Leger Jones is like just kind of a like archetype wing. Like he has wing size. He's gonna doesn't shoot it great, defends okay, shoots it better. Maybe there's 3-and-D potential there. I don't have a whole lot.
You know what Leger Jones is? He is a JUCO national champion for the Barton County Community College Cougars, coached by my former JUCO assistant coach, Jeremy Combs. And I actually watched him in person win that JUCO national championship. My former JUCO head coach is the athletic director at that school. My former JUCO assistant coach is the head coach. So shout out to Barton County.
I love it. And then they picked up a couple really experienced players on the undrafted market. Nick Boyd from Wisconsin. Yep. I know a lot of people really like Nick Boyd and think that he could really be something. I think he's somebody Sam was pretty high on.
He was
there. Yep. And then Graham Ike. I'm going to bring up Graham Ike mostly because one of my best friends in the world, Philippe, his wife, Kate, is the biggest Gonzaga fan I know in the world. But she actually is like, Graham Ike, I'm glad he's gone. Like she was just done with him. Like, and that's kind of been the Graham Ike story, right? Like it's like there was all this potential in the world and just never quite got there for what, everybody thought he might be. So shout out to Kate. Graham Ike is now off your roster.
I get that from my KU basketball fan friends at times as well.
Yeah, there we go. All right. So we're going to move on to the Detroit Pistons, and I'm going to let you go on Ibuka Okoro, who they traded up for in the first round.
Yeah, this was honestly a surprise for me. I've had to work myself into this a little bit. Real quick, shameless plug. If you want some Ibuka Okoro video breakdown, I have a 20-minute one that is free over on the Motor City Hoops Substack. Just go check it out. It's a free Substack over there. But I think what this provides Detroit, I am not super high on him playing with Cade Cunningham. What I am high on is his ability to play in the non-Cade Cunningham minutes and give them a ball handler and somebody that really pressures the rim. And then maybe eventually either he's so good at that Cade transitions to playing more off the ball. Maybe Ibuka Okoro really develops his off the ball game and his shot making and all of that. But this is something in terms of more ball handling, more rim pressure that the Detroit Pistons could use. I was a little bit surprised that they traded up. Obviously, they ended up getting those picks back, as we mentioned a few different times here. But I have come around a little bit on Ibuka Okoro. I'm not sure where the defense is going to end up with him. I may have went Phylon, who went after him, but obviously this is who Detroit, really prioritized. Sounded like this was Trajan's guy throughout a lot of the process. And then on Yinso, the big man, I want to say Kentucky, but that's where he started his career. And
Virginia.
then he was and then Kansas State, then Virginia. I actually have a breakdown on him as well. This center rotation for Detroit is now interesting with the, Isaiah Stewart gone. I think there is some room here over time, whether, with Paul Reed, Tolu Smith, and now Anyinso, I think he'll have a chance to work his way into, a potential role there.
There's a shot that has gone up again. Ugana Onyenso thinks he can block it.
Yes.
He is just you remember Prime oh my gosh, Whiteside for the Heat. That's what he reminds me of. It's I will block your shot. He will think he can block Wemby's turnaround jump shot. And he might not be wrong.
I watched the Duke game. He had 9 blocks against Duke. Yeah. And listen, 3 or 4 of them were against Cam Boozer. So Boozer did the whole deal where he kind of comes in, he throws the shoulder into the guy and moves him back. And Jensen's even a couple times he got moved back, he's just got such good length and athleticism. Yep. Right now on offense, don't ask him to do anything other than catch the ball and dunk it. There's nothing else there. He's not even that good of a screener, but block shots and rebounds, maybe something comes. Here's my worries with Okoro. He measured so small. That part worries me with that, but super duper smart player, high level, quick processor for him. I think he's going to fit in as another ball handler with the Pistons. I think probably a backup initially to start, but then I think he's going to be somebody who can maybe kind of graduate to being the on-ball guy next to Cade Cunningham, where Cunningham can then take some off-ball reps, which then what that allows him to do is we always kind of think of it as it gives him a chance to rest,
but also gives Cade Cunningham to then use cuts and other things to set himself up for buckets. So I do like the Okori pick. I just wish he was a little bit bigger, because then I would trust his frame would fill out and maybe holds up a little bit better defensively, but not the end of the world there. They've also picked up one of the other guys I really like, Jaden Henley, on the undrafted group. I think, again, just guys, I like these guys who do a lot of stuff, and I think he's gonna be a good player for them.
Sure. Yep.
All right, we're moving on to, and I didn't get the banner ready because I was texting somebody, because it's that time. It's the Denver Nuggets. And the Nuggets drafted 2 players in the second round after basically getting out of their first round pick. They get out of their first round pick to save against the tax line. Trevon Brazile, Bryce Hopkins. I like Bryce Hopkins because I liked him when he was at Providence.
Yeah.
This kid's had the most injury-filled time in school. The fact that Bryce Hopkins even get drafted is just a super cool story, because there were multiple times it looked like his career was over due to injuries. Again, wing guy, can do a lot of different stuff. We'll see. He's going to be in the G League. Trevon Brazile, I think it was either Sam or J. Kyle Mann said last night, I mean, he looks really good if you watch him run up and down the court, but then when you watch him play, he's just a weird player. Like I kind of think these guys are probably both going to be G League guys for the Nuggets.
Yeah, I will say, like, Brazile is the one that I think there's at least a chance here. Like, he's flashed some ability to space the floor, shoot the basketball. He has like ridiculous length and size and athleticism. Can he just kind of find that role, whether it's rebounding, whether it's the defensive disruption, knocking down shots, maybe just being a baseline, like cutter, lob threat, those type of things. So Brazile, listen, I agree with you. Like, Bryce Hopkins is a player that, you know, I'm glad he's getting his chance, but Brazile is probably then one that I'm a little bit more like, is there potentially something here that the Nuggets were able to get with a second round pick? You're there you go.
I have no idea what I did. Yeah, that was weird. You still there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're still recording. I think we're good. All right. Sorry. That was my bad, guys. This is what happens when I'm flying solo in the tech part of this stupid thing.
Yep.
All right. So, all right. Let's move to the Dallas Mavericks. Actually, no. Wait, I would want to go back. Let's go back to the Nuggets real quick. Aaron Nkrumah, they're picking him up out of the undrafted group. This is one of the cooler stories of all the guys who are coming in the league. Division III player at Worcester State in Massachusetts. Yes, that's how you say it. It's not Worcester or anything like that. You say it Worcester. You yell at me with the Massachusetts accent all you want, but that's what it was. Division III guy, became a big-time player, super productive for Tennessee State, and I'm really excited to see him kind of get into the program in the NBA and see what he can become.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, like, started out with the Portsmouth invite and then worked his way up, like, through like
played his way.
So like those stories are always really cool to hear. And these are the players I get excited about to watch at Summer League. I think you kind of alluded to this earlier. Like, yes, Cam Boozer, Devonta, like all of that, that's all really cool. But it's like, these are the players I'm like, okay, let's see what this looks like against this level of competition.
All right, Bryce, we have 19 minutes and then the phone's going to ring because I have to do radio. We have 7 teams left. So we're going to go rapid fire, couple minutes on each team. Sorry, guys, if we don't cover your teams the way you like, we apologize. We'll come back to these guys throughout the course of the year during Summer League. All right, Dallas Mavericks, Morez Johnson went a little higher than I think some people thought. I think this is a good pickup. This tells me the Mavs see Cooper Flagg is more of a 3 than a 4, but Johnson can also probably slide over, play some small ball 5 in small lineups. I really think he's good. I think Sergio De La Rey, we're going to see if he's a draft and stash or not. Sounds like he's going to be, then maybe not. But that's a big guard with a lot of skill. I think he's going to be good. Toby Lawal, I didn't really understand that pick. That feel like, hey, let's take a shot. And then Vyacheslav Ishchenko is a Russian guard he's not coming over anytime soon. And I think that was just, let's see. But he's somebody who did start to pop late in the draft process that a lot of people liked.
Yeah. Listen, I really like Merez Johnson Jr. It was a little bit of a surprise that he went that high, but joining his old coach, Dusty May, and I don't listen, that should not take away. Like, I think Merez Johnson Jr. is really good. I don't think he only got drafted there because Dusty May got the job. I think a lot of people had him as the best big in the class at that point. It just makes me wonder what they're going to do with their big man rotation now moving forward.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, it's definitely going to be good. All right, we are rapid firing this thing. We're going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They also traded out of their first round pick. Again, this was an idea to get off of that guaranteed money. But they landed with Malik Thomas, who I think a lot of people had a first round grade on, but probably right around the cusp of first, second round. I think this is a pretty good pickup considering they traded out of the first and came back in the second to get Thomas.
I agree. Like this is a nice pick at the top of the second round. I had a first round grade on him or a top 30 grade. If we had more time, we could talk about, the decision he made just in general. We could have done that with Isaiah Evans and Vasar as well, but just he stayed in the draft. So it is what it is. So for this conversation, I think this is really good value for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And then I will also mention quickly, like one of their non-drafted guys, Xavier Lee, a player that I've been watching, since he was at Princeton, obviously played at Florida.
Yeah, I got to see him a lot at Florida.
Oh, yeah, like real shifty. Like he's got some stuff to his game.
Too.
Yeah, really, really fun player there.
The only thing I'm going to say on Malik Thomas, if you want to watch, like if you like the early career Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., Houston Rockets, where they were much likely to bean the popcorn vendor in the head in the 30th row of the stands. Malik Thomas makes some absolutely wild decisions on the court where it's like, what are you doing? And there were times where I think Darius Akoff was like, you're not getting the ball for the next 12 possessions because whatever you did was some nonsense. There's to throw it back to a term I know the kids don't use anymore. There's a lot of YOLO moments with Malik Thomas. All right, Chicago Bulls, double first round picks, Caleb Wilson. That one's easy. This was the right pick for them at 4, super high end power forward. I think I texted you way early in his freshman season. I was like, there's like some shades of Evan Mobley, and well, I guess Chris Bosh too, even like Evan Mobley in there, where I think like, all right, this kid's got some stuff. A good defender, could do a little bit offensively, and then Dalen Swain, that one a little earlier than I thought he would go, but Dalen Swain is let's say a 3-and-D project. If he shot it better, again, would have been a little earlier of a pick. But I think Dalen Swain's a pretty good player. I like his defense. I like his toughness. I love that he rebounds.
So Caleb Wilson, I like Sam's comp for him. He said that, maybe there's some Pascal Siakam there with Caleb Wilson. And so I like the idea there. Caleb Wilson has to get better defensively to live up to that comp. I mean, obviously a lot, like Pascal Siakam's incredible, but Dalen Swain is the other player. Like one, I thought Swain was going to be the guy I was highest on compared to where they ended up getting drafted. I haven't done all the math there. It probably was Cameron Carr, but my thing with Swain was similar to Phylon. If you could give me Dalen Swain's Xavier defense his first 2 years with his Texas offense, I think people would have liked him even more. I don't think he's going to be this primary on-ball guy that we saw at times at Texas, but if the jumper is good enough, I love him as like a secondary second side creator. I think he rebounds. I think he'll get out in transition. That Chicago team is going to be fun with Josh Giddey, having the ball in his hands, and then Swain, Caleb Wilson, Modest Bazelis running the floor, Nick Claxton. I don't know how many games they're going to win, but I'll tune in and watch.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to be fun. And then they did some interesting stuff. Toba Waka.
Yeah.
Just another guy who's going to come in and just play super hard and kind of
rebound the heck out of the basketball.
Yeah, exactly. I like what he does is he isn't the most athletic rebounder, but what he is he'll move you. Like he's gonna get you off your spot, and then he'll use his athleticism to jump you.
Yep.
So I love that. Jalen Sellers, Donovan Atwell. It's kind of like lock those 3 guys in a cage with Swain and maybe Buzelis and like let them battle it out as like the big wing kind of battle there. Sellers a little smaller. He's probably more of a guard size player, but yeah, I think those are all interesting players. Sellers is going to be on a 2-way. Atwell's probably going to be in the G League for the Bulls.
Yep.
All right, Charlotte Hornets up next. They also had double first-round picks. I probably should have planned this out better, but here we are. We're this late in it. We're doing it. Hannes Steinbach and then Christian Anderson Jr. If you're looking for reaction on what about the LaMelo trade, Go back almost 3 hours now.
I was to say 2.5
That's when we
hours,
did that
yeah.
at the top of the show. You can get all your fill of the LaMelo Ball trade. I thought Steinbach was a really good pick. Felt like the right pick at where it was. How he fits in the front court, we'll see. They've now got a lot of guys in that front court with adding Naz Reid in this trade, and then you have Carl Brenner. You have Moussa Diabate, who's a terrific player that I like a lot. You also have even Grant Williams in there as a 4. We'll see what happens with Miles Bridges, but I think Steinbach eventually is going to work his way in there. Good rebounder, pretty good shooter, pretty good scorer. Defensively, that's my questions for him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what kind of rim protector he can be. I think he has a little bit of movement ability. Like, he's not switchable, but you can do some different coverages with him. I think with Steinbach, it's just like a bet on the offensive skill level for him. And then, as we mentioned with the LaMelo Ball trade, Christian Anderson, like, I think Kobe White is the answer right now in the contract they gave him. But Christian Anderson is a guy that I think he's more of a scorer, more of a like shooter, floor spacer than he is like a break you down creator, anything like that. But now all of a sudden he has real opportunity coming in as a rookie and may have been the best floor spacer shooter in the class.
Give him a couple years of learning how to be a playmaker, and I think Christian Anderson will be good. I'm not as worried about his defense, even though he's smaller, because he's pretty aggressive and he's really quick. And if you're going to be small, you better be super quick. And I think like you were talking about, be disruptive. I think he'll be somebody who's disruptive on the defensive end there. But yeah, he's a guy who, the nice thing is for them is Brandon Miller's probably going to have the ball a lot now in his hands. And I think he's somebody who, when he's in the game, can play off Brandon Miller. And because Kobe White's got good size, he'll be able to play with Kobe White in some backcourt looks as well. So that's good. And yeah, and I think that's almost a nice transition into the league, right? It's a nice, smooth transition in for him rather than, all right, kid, you got the ball, figure it out, go play.
Charles Lee runs great stuff too that puts his players in great position.
Yeah. And I think Knippel's they're going to explore the playmaking stuff with him a little bit.
I would agree.
As well as he ages. All right, we're going to the Brooklyn Nets. Mikael Brown Jr. was their first pick at number 6. We'll talk about it. Joshua Jefferson, their later first round pick that they got in the trade with that. Jefferson, again, of course, he's kind of a ground bound big, but can do a lot of stuff. He's a good passer. He's shooting is probably going to be what make or breaks him eventually. Again, another Grant Williams kind of style of big. We're kind of rugged, can do some stuff. If he shoots, he'll probably be okay. And then Tyler, I think you say Billadou.
Yeah.
Is how you say that. Out of UCLA. This is a guy I was like, didn't think much about him. Then this last year, it's like, holy crap. Like, this dude all of a sudden blew up and is like having big games.
Super skilled.
So let's go on Mikael Brown Jr.
So I mentioned this earlier. I would have taken Acuff here. Like this is going to be one of those points in a draft that people often look back at. And it was like, like comparing career for me anyway, this will be that one. I think the upside here with Mikael Brown Jr. is very, very high. I mean, we've saw some of the highlights and all of that. He does show a real ability to pass the ball. He passes the ball really well with his left hand. I love his kick ahead passes. I wonder where the defense ends up landing. I wonder where the scoring efficiency ends up landing, but this is where they went. This is the type of player they needed. I will say that. I like the Joshua Jefferson pick a lot, even as an older rookie. I think this is a team that could use that. Like, I don't know where he fits in with like Julius Randle now. I don't know what the plans are there. But yeah, I like Joshua Jefferson. I thought that was a good pick for them.
Let me tell you something fun with the Nets is between Yegor Jolman, Nolan Traore, Ben Saroff, Danny Wolf as their draftees last year for their 5 first rounders. Now Joshua Jefferson, adding Julius Randle. This team is just adding a lot of guys who can pass. Yeah. And I think that's going to help them. It should help them be a very watchable team. Mikael Brown Jr., I'll just say very quickly, he's an Orlando kid. So I got to see him play at the high school level. Started out at Orlando Christian Prep. Then he went to Overtime Elite, left there, came back to high school to go to the DME Academy. So I got to see him play a lot here in the Orlando area. There's a lot to like with Mikael Brown Jr. Had kind of a weird year at Louisville, had the back injury. That makes me nervous. Back injuries when you're this young, like that's a little scary, a little worrisome, but there's a lot of skill in there with Mikael Brown Jr., of course. So now we're going to go to the Boston Celtics draft with the Nets. I'm just checking to see, did we miss any undrafted guys? I don't think we did for
I think
the
we're good.
Nets or Hornets. So I think we're good. All right, Boston Celtics, they took in the first round Chris Sanak Jr. and then Dylan Mitchell. Kind of two polar opposites as far as age. Sanak super young. Mitchell had been around forever in the college game. Sanak is one of those really athletic bigs, but he can also step out and shoot it. So how much do you want him stepping out and shoot it? That's the question. Even Mike Zarin talked about that a little bit. Like we might have to figure that out as we get into it with him. But I think he's going to be a really kind of fun developmental prospect for the Celtics at the big man position. I know Neemias Queta and Luka Garza aren't like all-star level guys. I think Boston's generally kind of okay with those guys right now. And then Sanak can kind of come along behind. There is some Rob Williams to his game as far as like being a bouncy young guy who can do some stuff. Better shooter than Rob, not nearly as physical. And then Dylan Mitchell, this is a classic. If he could shoot, Dylan Mitchell would have been a first-round pick because there's not he's an excellent defender, really, really, really good rebounder for someone his size, and then really a good passer. I think Rick Pitino letting his forwards, we're going to talk about one in a second too, kind of do a lot with the ball, like showed like these guys like, okay, I can pass. And they got a little bit more adventurous with their passing. What is Jay Kyle, man, passing vocabulary is what he likes to use. I just like these guys will try stuff. And I think with Dylan Mitchell, that was pretty good.
Yeah, Sanak, I think, is a little bit of a like, I don't think he's going to factor into the Celtics big man rotation this year, but like that's an interesting team to develop him. He is a really good rebounder. I'm interested to see if they try to develop him, really do try to lean into the floor spacing for him. Dylan Mitchell, I think this is a smart pick. Just continue to add to that room of Baylor Shireman, Jordan Walsh, Hugo Gonzalez, like all of those guys. And, just continue to see kind of who rises to the top, who's able to figure it out, right? I think he can really defend. You mentioned some of the passing. I don't know if he ever is able to space the floor, but has the athleticism to finish around the rim. Milos Uzan, I think, is a guy that's going to go run the G League as a point guard. I know Kingston Flemings was the point guard at Houston last year, but I think Milos is a guy that can do that. And then Tucker DeVries, is a player that bring in, can space the floor for you, is able to shoot the basketball.
Good movement shooter,
which is always a huge factor size with these type of players. Can you do it all? I know he only shot 33% this last season, but just his career volume percentage, free throw percentage, all of that. Like, this is a guy that's going to be able to do that. Can he figure out any of the other stuff to contribute?
And I think he started at Drake, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
I might be wrong with that, but he did more with the ball too at the lower level there, and then went to West Virginia, finished at Indiana. I really like that pickup. Yeah, we'll see with Milos Uzan, where that kind of goes there. And then our question from the chat is Josh Hart a realistic comp for Dylan Mitchell if he can develop into even a 30% 3-point shooter? Well, 30% is awful. Like, nobody wants you there. You need to be more like 35. But with Josh Hart's just a ball of energy. I don't know that I would use that as the comp for
the one I had was Derek Jones Jr. Like Derek Jones Jr. was more of the comp I was thinking.
A little less athletic, but probably a little bit more skilled, I think, with the ball, especially. I'm there. All right, let's go to close it out. We got 5 minutes. Look at how good we did. So proud of us. I gotta write their thing here. The Atlanta Hawks. Hawks had a really good draft night. Draft nights. I keep saying draft night because I'm so used to that from years ago. But come on, there we go. Atlanta Hawks closing out the show with the Hawks. The Hawks had, like I said, pretty good night. Kingston Flemings with the first of their first round picks. That was very confusing sentence structure. At number 8, Zuby Ejiofor went with their later second round pick. And then they traded back in, and there's been a lot of reporting, traded back in to jump the Lakers, who they believed were going to go after Henri Visar, and they got him there. So let's hear your thoughts on the Hawks.
Flemings was the player I was talking about earlier. My first watch of him, because this was another player like Wagler, where he wasn't on the preseason, mock draft or whatever, but he like just jumped off the screen to me when I was specifically watching for somebody else. So I love his speed. I love his ability to attack the paint and get downhill. I think he's very engaged defensively. You don't play in that program if you aren't. So I really like this pick for the Hawks. I came around on them drafting a guard here later in the cycle. I was a little lower on Zuby Ejiofor. I thought they might go a more like traditional big to pair with Onyeka Okongwu, but if that's the big they like and they just want 48 minutes of it, Zuby makes a ton of sense. My favorite stat, I have two really fun stats. Zuby had more total offensive rebounds than defensive rebounds in his college career.
That's crazy.
And the other one is, this is going to make it seem like I'm throwing shade at Michael Brown Jr. I'm not. He had exactly one offensive rebound in his career. I forgot to mention that earlier. But Zuby can really rebound. He has like this defensive versatility. And then Henri Vesar, man, I like his skill level a lot. I think he's going to have the play strength is going to be interesting, but I like his ability to potentially space the floor.
Yeah, I love the way he is. He's a pretty good shot blocker as well.
Yeah,
on the weak side, he'll come over and help with things like that. The rebounding, if he'd done that at Arizona, we'd all believe in it a little bit more. We only got kind of 1 year of it. Let's see what that looks like. Kingston Flemings, guys, I'm going super rapid fire here, and then we're going to close out because they're already calling me. Flemings is just really tough, and I love how tough that kid is. I think he's going to be really, really good for the Hawks, and I love that they went kind of double big-ish with Ejiofor and Vesar to cover the big spots. Ejiofor, he's going to make people angry too because he just plays super hard.
He does.
He's going to get guys. Bryce, thank you so much, man. Yep. I appreciate you for hanging out with me here today for really nearly 3 hours. Shout out to the chat. If you're there the whole time, let us know in the comments. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Trevor and I will be back tomorrow for Front Office Friday. Thanks so much to everybody for hanging out with us here for this draft recap breakdown show. Bryce, thank you again.
Of course.